Chapter 2575. I've already told him to come and be my heavenly demon sect's vice sect leader. I can also send my disciples to help him. Now, I have to find a way to hide my connection with him. Oh, right. What's the name of the disciple who sent the elixir to Xiaohua? I can't let him live a moment longer. This guy only knows how to flaunt his superiority and fight alone. How could he know how wonderful it is to have the heavenly demon sect as his backing? Look, I don't have to do it myself. Naturally, my subordinates will deliver the Taiching sect's wine. Xiaohua wants to drink it, but can he drink it? Alas, I don't know how Yutong is doing. I don't know if the words I taught her could deceive those swords. However, even if she couldn't deceive them, they wouldn't do anything out of line to her, right? Speaking of which, it's strange. Where did Zhang Yue go? She's really dead and nowhere to be seen. It's very strange. Just when Zhang Qingxiao was both intoxicated and worried, she suddenly felt a jolt in her heart. She looked up and saw that not far ahead, a scarlet mist flashed, and a messaging charm appeared outside the light shield. Pa! Zhang Qingxiao snapped her fingers, and a small crack appeared on the light shield. The message talisman rushed in through the crack, and naturally, a few strands of the yellow dust in the sky also seeped in. Oh! Zhang Qingxiao's divine sense entered the message talisman and looked at it. A strange look appeared on her face. She snorted coldly and waved her hand. The message talisman flew out again. Oomph! The great vice sect leader, Yin of the heavenly demon sect, is coming. He's really arrogant. He didn't even write anything on the message talisman. Only the word Yin. Damn it. It seems that he really thinks he's the first vice sect leader of the heavenly demon sect. Zhang Qingxiao sneered and waved her hand to destroy the spirit wine that had fallen into the yellow dust. However, just as her fingers touched the wine cup, she stopped and a smile appeared on her face. After a while, a faint black shadow appeared in the yellow dust. The shape of the shadow couldn't be seen. It looked like a human figure, but also like a floating mist. When the shadow got closer, the figure was revealed. Io, vice sect leader Yin. Zhang Qingxiao hurriedly got up and waved her hand, as if she was lifting up a curtain, parting the brilliance of the bright scenic bell. Please come in, please come in. It had only been 10 months since they last met, but the vice sect master's invisibility technique had improved by leaps and bounds. Fortunately, it's noon right now. If it was dusk or night, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to see it. Yin Meng's lips curled into a proud smile. She didn't care about the brilliance of the bright scenic bell at all. Then, she went in without hesitation. It was as if he didn't care that he had entered the range of Zhang Qingxiao's magical weapon. Zhang Qingxiao understood that it was not because Yin Meng was not worried about her, but because Yin Meng was extremely confident in his own cultivation and was not afraid that Zhang Qingxiao would do anything to him. Yin Meng stood on the silk carpet and glanced around with a smile. Sect leader Zhang really knows how to enjoy life. Tasting the sweet bamboo liquid in this Lian country, filled with yellow soil, really makes this old man envious. This old man is troubled by the trivial matters of Tiangang sect every day. I really want to learn from sect master Zhang and steal half a day of leisure. Zhang Qingxiao wasn't angry because Yin Meng didn't call her Lord Sect Master and only called her Sect Leader Zhang. Instead, she was extremely polite. She cupped her hands and said, "How can this Zhang be qualified? It's only because of some Yinze that I can become the sect leader of Heavenly Demon Sect. When it comes to talent and governance, how can I compare to Vice Sect Leader Yin? As for the cultivation of demonic arts, don't even mention it. My Heavenly Demon 13 sect still has to rely on Vice Sect Leader Yin, this kind of person with outstanding talent. Especially Vice Sect Leader Yin, who is the first Vice Sect Leader of Heavenly Demon Sect. All of the sect's affairs, no matter how big or small, rely on Vice Sect Leader Yin's participation. The capable do more work, it doesn't matter." Yin Meng sat down unceremoniously, and Zhang Qingxiao hurriedly waved his hand and said, "This sect leader has just fallen. If Vice Sect Leader Yin doesn't mind, please drink a few cups, how about it?" Ha ha ha. Thank you, Sect Leader Zhang. To be able to make Sect Leader Zhang personally pour wine, this heavenly demon sect, This old man is the first. He laughed sinisterly and made a grabbing motion with his hand. 5 wisps of faint black mist flew out from his fingertips, grabbing the spirit wine from the wine cups. He opened his mouth, and the scarlet liquid fell into his mouth. Phew! After the wine entered his stomach, Ming let out a long breath and praised. Sure enough, it's Tai Ching Sek's famous sweet bamboo liquid. It really lives up to its reputation. If Vice Sect Leader likes it, you could drink a few more cups. Zhang Qingxiao reached out and personally raised the wine cup, poured wine for Ming, and said, "This sect leader only has this little hobby. I didn't expect Vice Sect Leader to like it too. Who wouldn't like such a good wine?" Ming rolled his eyes at Zhang Qingxiao and said, "However, if you want to drink such good wine often, there must be a price." Yes, Zhang Qingxiao pretended not to know what Ming said, and raised his thumb and said, "It turns out that Vice Sect Leader is also an expert in this field. This sect leader came here to drink the sweet bamboo liquid because this spirit wine is brewed from the pure earth attribute sweet bamboo fruit. It can only be drunk in a place with extremely rich earth attribute spirit chi of heaven and earth to taste its best taste." Oh, obviously, Ming didn't know this story, but he also raised his eyebrows and said, "So sect leader Zhang also knows about it." This sect leader just found out. Zhang Qingxiao smiled wholeheartedly, and it seemed that he didn't change his attitude because of Ming's attitude. Ming poured a few more cups, and Zhang Qingxiao also accompanied at the same time. After a long while, he asked tentatively, "By the way, Vice Sect Leader came here from afar. What's the matter?" "It's not a big matter. He just wanted to ask about the establishment of the Heavenly Demon Sect." Ming seemed to be asking a junior. "Oh, this matter is a big matter of my Heavenly Demon Sect." Zhang Qingxiao smiled and said, "Although my Heavenly Demon Sect has been established long ago and even has some influence on the Dawn Rain continent, it's not completely open yet. Under the planning of the various Vice Sect leaders, especially Vice Sect Leader our sect leader has already made arrangements according to the previous discussion. All the preparations have been completed, and it can be said that everything is ready except for the east wind." Good. When the nascent soul cultivators from the 3 cultivation countries go to the Sky Patrol City, my Heavenly Demon Sect will be established when they don't care. When the battle between the Tao cultivators is over, my Heavenly Demon Sect will also have a firm foothold. What can the dozens of Tao sects do to my Heavenly Demon Sect?" Ming said proudly. Zhang Qingxiao's face showed a trace of hesitation, and there was a trace of fear as he said in a low voice, "Actually, Vice Sect Leader this sect leader feels that the current situation of my Heavenly Demon Sect is already very good. The number of disciples is slowly increasing, and the influence of the 13 demon sects is also gradually expanding. There's no need for us to establish a sect right away. It won't be too late to establish a sect after our strength is consolidated, and when we can completely resist the Tao sect, right? If those nascent soul cultivators send their disciples to annihilate us, this sect leader is afraid that the good situation from before will be gone forever." "What do you know?" Ming sneered. "This is the best time for my Heavenly Demon Sect to establish a sect. The Tao sect has placed their focus on the sword cultivators, and they don't have the strength to take care of my demon sect. The sword Tao battle? You don't have to worry. As the saying goes, to kill 1,000 enemies, you lose 800 of your own men. When those Tao sect cultivators extricate themselves from the sword Tao battle, their strength will be almost depleted. How will they have the energy to attack my demon sect? Once my demon sect stands out in the Dawn Rain mainland, the number of disciples joining my demon sect will be 100 or 1,000 times more than before. The 13 demon sects will soon become an existence comparable to the 13 cultivation sects. When that time comes, even if the Tao sects have the strength to annihilate us, will they still dare to do so? Will they still dare to start a Taoist demon war? Yes, this sect leader is not very proficient in these things." Zhang Qingxiao smiled awkwardly and said, "Even thinking about it gives me a headache. The demons of the demon realm are not good at these things. Yes, this old man knows this. That's why I really lowered myself to help you. Meng nodded and pointed to the west, saying mysteriously, this old man received some fragmentary information. Over there, the people who are coming. I'm afraid they'll be coming soon. We have to establish the 13 demon sects before they come and let them see that we have a great situation here. They're coming so soon? Zhang Qingxiao was extremely delighted, but also a little panicked. Sect leader Zhang, don't be afraid. Meng seemed to have seen through Zhang Qingxiao's thoughts and said with a smile, you've established the 13 demon sects. With such a great contribution, no matter who comes, won't they want you to be the sect leader? Besides, even if it's me, I'm now the deputy sect leader of the Heavenly Demon Sect. I'll definitely put in a good word for sect leader Zhang. Thank you, deputy sect leader Yin. Zhang Qingxiao even bowed and thanked him. Everything depends on deputy sect leader Yin. If the people from that side come, you must properly introduce them to this sect leader. That's natural. Meng stood up and said, this is also an important matter for this old man to come here today. You just have to do well in establishing the sect. No matter how badly you do other things, nothing will happen. Yes, this sect leader understands. Zhang Qingxiao was still respectful. Which sword cultivator's little lady? Meng looked around and said with a smile, why don't you call her out for this old man to see? This sect leader is already a little tired of looking at her. She wanted to go sightseeing, so this sect leader sent a few disciples to follow her. I'm afraid she's already in Meng Kingdom. Zhang Qingxiao said with a smile. Oh, so sect leader Zhang is already tired of her. Meng's eyes showed a trace of a smile, and he looked Zhang Qingxiao up and down and said, this old man thinks that the little lady is not bad. This sect leader knows, Zhang Qingxiao smiled apologetically. Wait for this sect leader's arrangements in the future. Thank you, sect leader Zhang. Meng laughed loudly, stood up, and cupped his hands, saying, this old man still has a lot of things to do in Tiangang sect, so I won't accompany sect leader Zhang. Goodbye. Chapter 2576. I'll send vice sect leader Yin off. Zhang Qingxiao respectfully opened the bright scenic bell's light screen and said with a smile, no need. Meng waved his hand and said, with such yellow dust, I still have to use my invisibility technique. I'm afraid you won't be able to catch up. That's right. Then I'll send vice sect leader off with my eyes. Zhang Qingxiao suddenly understood and slapped his own forehead with a smile. Zhang Qingxiao waited for Meng to turn into a wisp of smoke and fly away in a seemingly slow but swift manner. She then closed the light screen of the bright scenic bell. The corners of her mouth curled into a cold smile as a trace of viciousness surfaced in her eyes. With a wave of her hand, a bright red flame flashed. Not only were the jade cups and wine bottles used by Meng turned into dust, even the jade table and silk blanket were turned into dust. Zhang Qingxiao took out another silk blanket and wine bottle and sat down again. Meng, that old bastard, bullied me too much. Zhang Qingxiao swore inwardly, but then he laughed again. It was a very carefree laugh. Isn't this what I want? In this world, people without strength can only be looked down upon by others. They can only be humiliated by others and feel unreconciled. But am I that kind of person? Didn't you see that my junior brother could casually kill a middle-stage golden core cultivator? He even used the face of a middle-stage Foundation establishment cultivator to fool around in the Imperial Thunder Sect. Since he dared to kill Marshal Cohen, he naturally dared to kill Qian and Mo naturally. Damn it, that Tu Hong wouldn't be here to kill, right? Xiao Hua killed so many famous cultivators, but he still calmly stayed among the cultivators and no one suspected him. Wasn't he just relying on his cultivation to cover up? I can easily kill Meng, but what about the people behind him? That bullshit Vice Alliance leader Luo and those Devil Sect people who are coming. And there seems to be a lot more. How can I kill them all at once? Forget it, a real man knows when to yield and when not. I still let Meng look down on me. So what? Zhang Qingxiao reached out and picked up a cup of sweet bamboo liquor and laughed. Aren't you all still being played by me in the palm of my hand? Other than me and senior sister, who else knows that Xiao Hua is my junior brother? Other than Zhang Zhihao, even Vice Alliance leader Luo himself doesn't know that it's just my clone. Ha ha ha! What a joke! Zhang Qingxiao laughed heartily for a moment, and then his expression calmed down again. Even though it was extremely rare for him to reveal his inner thoughts like this, if Yinming hadn't mentioned Zhang Yutong just now, how could he have had such an opportunity? The yellow dust outside the light barrier was still the same. Even when night fell, not only did it show no signs of stopping, it even began to wreak havoc, dyeing the horizon yellow. Originally, one could still see the desolation of blood, but now it had turned into an earthy yellow color, giving off a very filthy feeling. Forget it. Zhang Qingxiao waved her hand and stood up. She sighed. In the bleak dusk, the sunset always makes people nostalgic. Unfortunately, it's Yutong's favorite. When she was here, even the heavens took care of her. Today, I came here to watch the sunset and wanted to feel it. Who knew that not only would Yinming disturb me, even the heavens wouldn't give me face. Just as Zhang Qingxiao stood up, a scarlet communication talisman landed in front of him. Zhang Qingxiao impatiently reached out and took the communication talisman. After looking at it for a moment, his expression turned serious. He raised his head and pondered for a moment. Then, with a tap of his hand, the communication talisman flew away. Then, Zhang Qingxiao stood there straight and looked to the west with his hands clasped behind his back. In that earthy yellow area, half a hazy, setting sun slowly set. Disciple greets sect master. A similarly faint black fog drifted over from the yellow dust. When it landed on the ground, the black fog didn't hesitate to kneel on the ground, revealing a humble figure. In his hand was a pitch-black magic slip, and he held it above his head with both hands. This humble one has a jade slip for Lord. This humble one didn't dare to delay, and specially sent it over. Oh, Zhang Qingxiao was slightly taken aback. With a wave of his hand, the magic slip fell into his hand. However, he didn't care about it. He glanced at it briefly and threw it on the jade table beside him. Then, he looked at the disciple kneeling on the ground and snorted coldly. He asked, how is the situation with the establishment of my demonic 13 sects? Why aren't you properly taking care of things in the country of Shi? Why did you come to the country of Lian for an insignificant jade slip? Yes, sect master understands. That disciple lowered his head and didn't dare to raise it. He carefully said, the 3 aristocratic families in the country of Shi, Huai Xian's Fan family and Fan Xiu's Zhao family have long been under our control. Now, we only need to change their recruitment. As for Jie Ran's Zhao family, we have already arranged disciples nearby. As long as sect master gives the order, this humble one's disciples can quickly control Jie Ran's Zhao family. These 3 families are in the shape of the character. They can be the foundation of our demonic 13 sects in the country of Shi. Good. You all have contributed greatly to the establishment of the demonic 13 sects. Zhang Qingxiao nodded. What about the country of Ming? According to sect master's arrangement, the foundation of the 3 aristocratic families, Qian City's Ming family, Immerse City's Qi family, and Yi City's Qian family, will be the foundation of our demonic 13 sects in the country of Ming. However, other than the Yi City's Qian family, which currently has a 90% chance, the other 2 families only have a 50% chance. After all, there are other cultivation sects nearby these 2 families. This humble one is afraid that our demonic 13 sects will make a move. They may not just stand by and watch. You don't have to worry about this. Zhang Qingxiao waved his hand. If they know what's good for them, then let's forget about it. If they dare to make a move, then we'll just eliminate them all. Yes, this humble one understands. That disciple said again. The establishment of sects in the country of Lian is much faster than the other 2 countries. The Qianpeng Ridge's Huang family, Demonic Caves Chong family, and Fanyi Mountain's Wang family are all under sect master's control. They can change their sects at any time. This humble one really admires them. Ha ha! Yin, when did you learn to flatter this sect master? Zhang Qingxiao laughed out loud. These three families in the country of Lian were originally the secret hands of our demonic 13 sects. They were cultivated decades ago. If this sect master couldn't control them now, how could he dare to establish the demonic 13 sects? This humble one admires sect master for this. The disciple named Yi Yin said respectfully. The demonic 13 sects were established by sect master single-handedly. Moreover, it started decades ago. It's only now that you've revealed your ferocious side. If it were this humble one, I'm afraid I wouldn't have been able to hold back 20 years ago. Haha, do you think I didn't want to establish a sect earlier? Zhang Qingxiao laughed and scolded. In the past, my strength wasn't enough. Now that I have the 13 deputy sect masters, I have the courage to speak. If it weren't for you, I would still be holding back. I wouldn't dare. We all relied on sect master's talent. Yin said hurriedly. If it weren't for sect master, how could we have today's status and achievements? How could we have a firm foothold in front of the Tao sect cultivators? Moreover, we have to rely on sect master to stand up to them in the future. We really can't do anything. Ha! Zhang Qingxiao enjoyed it in her heart, and the corners of her mouth curled into a slight smile. Ever since this humble one entered the demonic 13 sects, I've treated the demonic 13 sects as my home. It's a place where this humble one can shelter from the wind and rain in the future. Yin still didn't dare to look up as he said humbly. Moreover, sect master's great talent and bold vision has left this humble one in awe. To be honest, this humble one has considered the future development of the demonic 13 sects. But this humble one really didn't expect that sect master would establish a sect in the 3 cultivation countries at once. This way, our demonic 13 sects will become a colossus. This humble one's thoughts are really insignificant compared to sect masters. Haha, I'm afraid you don't understand, right? Zhang Qingxiao said with a smile. Sect master is really godly. Yin raised his head at this moment. His fair and clear face revealed a shrewd look, and his eyes flashed with admiration. No one would associate him with a demonic cultivator. This humble one has never dared to ask, afraid that it would disturb sect master's train of thought. Now that everything is ready, please enlighten me. Sect master, we were talking about forbearance just now. Yin, you're really forbearing. Speak, you're the 2nd deputy sect master of the demonic 13 sects. This sect has nothing to hide from you. Zhang Qingxiao said with a nod. Actually, there's nothing too suspicious. This humble one just feels that although our demonic 13 sects have a lot of people, the cultivation of our disciples is still shallow and can't be compared to those cultivation sects. Even if we establish a sect, it's best to find a slightly remote place that's easy to defend and hard to attack. We don't even want to be discovered by them. Yin smiled apologetically. Moreover, sect master has established 3 bases in each of the 3 cultivation countries at once. Isn't this just dividing the power of our demonic 13 sects? Each base will only have 30% of our power. Moreover, the development of the 3 demonic 13 sects will definitely be different. Which demonic 13 sect is the real demonic 13 sect? Ha ha ha, Zhang Qingxiao laughed. He knew in his heart that Yin might not be ignorant. However, he still asked this question. On one hand, it was to express his respect for him, which showed that he was really humble. On the other hand, it was also to express his unswerving loyalty to the demonic 13 sect and his concern for its development. In the face of Zhang Qingxiao's laughter, Yin's expression was normal, as if he was really asking for advice. Yin, didn't you say so yourself? The cultivation of our demonic 13 sects disciples is generally shallow, and the newly recruited disciples are all useless. It's not suitable for us to go against the cultivation sects directly. In that case, 100,000 people and 30,000 people are all the same in the eyes of the cultivation sects. Since that's the case, Why don't we divide the 100,000 people into 3 groups? We can directly divert the attention of the Tao sect's cultivators. Moreover, in this way, our demonic 13 sect, which originally had 1 base, will now have 3 bases. Won't our reputation be even greater? Moreover, a cunning rabbit has 3 burrows. Our demonic 13 sect has 3 bases all of a sudden. How would they know which one is the real demonic 13 sect? Although the 3 cultivation countries are all Tao sects, they're not one country or sect. If they want to deal with our demonic 13 sect, they will definitely have to join forces. There will also be dirty tricks involved. Isn't this a good thing for our demonic 13 sect? Chapter 2577. Yi nodded hurriedly. Yes. They thought that Lord Sect Master set up a maze, but who would know that these 3 places are the true foundations of our heavenly demon sect? As for the development between the 3 foundations that you mentioned, there's even less to worry about. Zhang Qingxiao continued. Fiendish cultivators like us emphasize on bloodshed. Whoever develops better, our sect will invest more in that person. The 13 sects of heavenly demon sect. Perhaps in the end, there's only one sect that can stand tall in the Dawn Rain continent. Or perhaps it can develop into 30 sects. All these will depend on you, Yin. Yes, I understand. I'll definitely sacrifice my life for the development of our heavenly demon sect. Yin bowed in admiration. Yin, remember, heavenly demon sect is our heavenly demon sect. Your development is the development of our heavenly demon sect. And your improvement is the improvement of our heavenly demon sect. Your heavenly Brahmin sect is also a part of my heavenly demon sect. Supporting the heavenly Brahmin sect is the greatest support for my sect. If your Tian Fan sect develops well in the future, you can even establish your own sect and be the master of your own sect. Zhang Qingxiao said earnestly. Yi Yin's eyes flashed with a trace of fanaticism when he heard that, but he concealed it immediately and knelt on the ground. I only need to follow Lord Sect Master's footsteps. I don't dare to think too much. I'll up to you. Whatever you think, our sect will support it. Zhang Qingxiao nodded and took out a storage bag. She handed it to Yi Yin and said, This is the reward from Tiangang's sect. You can deal with it as you see fit. Thank you, Lord Sect Master. Yi Yin took the storage bag, scanned it with his divine telekinesis, and immediately bowed in joy. After Yi Yin left, Zhang Qingxiao couldn't wait to reach out and pick up the fiendish bamboo slip again. She pointed her finger, and a blood-colored mist shot into the fiendish bamboo slip. The blood-colored brilliance on the fiendish bamboo slip flickered like a ball of blood. It was only after a while that the fiendish bamboo slip was slightly white. What's going on? Zhang Qingxiao immersed his divine sense into the magic bamboo slip that had its restriction lifted. He couldn't help but be shocked. That Prajnaparamita Heart Sutra was given to junior sister by Xiaohua. I have also carefully looked at it. It is a Buddhist sex cultivation method. There is nothing strange about it. That's why I was relieved to have someone send it over. How could this Jiang Luer lose consciousness after cultivating? Motherfucker, I'm in a terrible fix. Zhang Qingxiao slapped his forehead and was about to get up in annoyance. However, after he put away the jade table, he smiled bitterly. When it comes to junior sister, my heart is in a mess. I'm a devil cultivator, not a Buddhist. What's the use of me going there? The one who tied the bell should untie it. If they wanted to find Jiang Luer's illness, Xiaohua had to go. But this guy was in the sword tomb. If I don't go, who can find him? Forget it. I'll tell Junior Marshall's sister first. Anyway, it's useless for me to go. Zhang Qingxiao was also helpless. He wrote something in the magic bamboo slip and then pointed his hand. The blood-red mist appeared again. When it's time to ask Xiaohua for help, we'll go together. When the mist on the message talisman disappeared, Zhang Qingxiao put away the bright scenic bell. His body was suffused with a faint brilliance, blocking the yellow soil outside his body. His figure flashed slightly and disappeared. That figure was like an antelope hanging its horn without a trace. It was many times more brilliant than Yin Meng. Zhang Qingxiao was thinking about going to the sword tomb to find Xiao Hua. However, even if he really went to the sword tomb, it might not be easy to find Xiao Hua at this time, because Xiao Hua had already gone deep into the sword tomb, following the instructions of the magic bamboo slip. At the periphery of the sword tomb, there was an endless stretch of purple jasmine flowers. Even for a male cultivator like Xiao Hua, when he looked at it, his eyes were filled with gorgeous purple. He couldn't help but be intoxicated. Not to mention women like formless Sword Guyu. They also saw the purple that spread between heaven and earth as the most beautiful scene in the Sword Tomb. However, the Sword Tomb, which was known as one of the 10 most dangerous places in the country of Shi, had shed its gorgeous outer layer and revealed its sinister side in front of Xiao Hua. As Xiao Hua went deeper, the purple jasmine flowers gradually became sparse. Instead, it was replaced by a kind of blood-red vegetation. This vegetation had already existed when the purple jasmine flowers were still flourishing. However, it was stuck to the ground and was covered by the purple. Now that the pure purple had become thinner, this blood-red color was revealed. Moreover, the weather inside the sword tomb was different from the outside. Gradually, the dark clouds above Xiao Hua's head became thicker, and the wind became more bitingly cold. If the winter's cold wind was said to be as cold as a knife to the people of the secular world, then the cold wind inside the sword tomb was really like a knife. Not to mention the bone-piercing cold, the wind blades that often rolled up in the wind also slightly stirred up the light protecting Xiao Hua's body. Sometimes, the light even faintly flickered, forcing Xiao Hua to constantly urge his magic power. The strangest thing was, from time to time, a few bean-sized raindrops would also drip down. Under this kind of cold weather, these raindrops didn't condense. Instead, each raindrop contained an extremely strong force and was even somewhat sharp. Every time it hit Xiao Hua's body, it was like a small flying sword attacking him. Damn it, that Yutong is really determined to kill me. The more Xiao Hua flew in, the more alarmed he became. This strange phenomenon in the sword tomb must be caused by the remnant sword intent. Those hundreds of thousands, millions of battle spirits would also add fuel to the fire. Under this kind of extreme situation, this young master was only an early foundation establishment cultivator at that time. How could he resist? I'm afraid that before I reached this place, I would have already been buried under the purple jasmine flowers. But Yutong, he was only a 10th layer Qi refining brat at that time. Why did he come here? Or what is the Huanhua sect doing here? Xiao Hua muttered again. Didn't Zhong Haoren say it? These 2 years, we met many cultivation families, but we didn't see many Huanhua sect disciples. Then why did Yin Guichong and the others suddenly come here? Didn't they participate in the war? He Huanhua sect, a Huanhua sect. This young master sincerely wanted to enter the Huanhua sect that day. But not only was this Yutong senior meddling, he was also threatened in the main hall. Since this young master came here today, I want to see what kind of tricks you were playing that day. Xiao Hua originally resented Yutong's insidiousness, but when he thought about how dangerous this place was, and how Yutong was only 100% Qi refining cultivator at that time, and now he was only at the early stage of foundation establishment. He might not even be able to reach the middle stage of foundation establishment. Back then, he needed someone to protect him when he went to this sword tomb, so he definitely wouldn't go deep into this place. Thus, his thoughts of looking for Yutong faded. A huge sound of water splashing could be heard in the air. The raindrops that were just drizzling a moment ago suddenly became bigger, sprinkling down like a torrential downpour. The protective brilliance around Xiao Hua's body flickered. It's a bit strange. Xiao Hua hurriedly urged his magic power to maintain the protective brilliance. While he raised his head to look at the already pitch-black night sky, he couldn't see the slightest bit of starlight. He thought very strangely, this sword tomb's rainstorm, doesn't it have thunder? It seems that ever since this young master entered the sword tomb, I haven't heard the sound of thunder. Thinking this, Xiao Hua pricked up his ears. Sure enough, his ears were filled with the sound of raindrops falling, there wasn't the slightest bit of sonorous thunder. Hee hee, the world is so big that nothing is too strange. Xiao Hua laughed inwardly. Today my horizons have been broadened again. After flying for a while, the entire sword tomb was pitch black. The rainwater that was like the Milky Way hanging upside down was like the flying sword of swordsmen, attacking Xiao Hua from top to bottom all the time. Xiao Hua gradually felt impatient. As a result, Xiao Hua took out the jade slip again. His divine sense was just about to enter it to check when suddenly, Xiao Hua felt that within a few dozen feet to his left, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth suddenly transformed, and a burst of intense sword chi was born from all around. Who? Xiao Hua coldly shouted, his Buddhist sense sweeping over, but he saw that the surroundings were empty. There wasn't any swordsman's figure. Moreover, at this time, the space near Xiao Hua's left had a faint feeling of sharpness and gravity. His Buddhist sense was unconsciously obstructed and was firmly suppressed by that gravity, unable to go very far. Seeing that his Buddhist sense was suppressed, Xiao Hua didn't dare to be careless. His figure suddenly stopped in midair, his eyes vigilantly sweeping all around. Wung wung, a burst of sword cries rose from the distance, like a swarm of bees, becoming increasingly louder. Not good. It's a remnant sword array. Xiao Hua felt a swift and fierce sword intent approaching, and a layer of goosebumps unconsciously appeared on his arms. A kind of vigilance also appeared in his heart, and he immediately understood. As a result, his figure hastily flashed to the side. Xiao Hua's ethereal steps was already very mysterious, and at this time, with the addition of the wind evasion, his entire body was like a wisp of smoke, floating without a trace of smoke. In the blink of an eye, he had moved more than one zhang. The instant he dodged, 5 sword lights simultaneously rushed out from a pentagonal area around Xiao Hua. Those sword lights were of different colors, and they flew straight into the air, stabbing towards the place where Xiao Hua was previously standing. Moreover, those sword lights trembled slightly, and along with this strange trembling fluctuation, those sword lights rapidly expanded. By the time they stabbed in front of Xiao Hua, it had already become a 5-colored sword screen, flatly covering an area of more than 10 zhang. Although Xiao Hua had dodged more than 1 zhang, that place was still where the sword lights were attacking. What kind of sword array is this? Xiao Hua's heart trembled, and without hesitation, he waved his hand and took out the wishful steel staff. He waved it casually, protecting his body without a drop of water leaking out. Kung kung kung. Like raindrops hitting a boulder, the sound was unceasing. The sword lights were all blocked by the wishful steel staff. Every time the sword light fell on the wishful steel staff, the weight in Xiao Hua's hand increased by a little. Not long after, the weight of the wishful steel staff was quite considerable. Isn't the wishful steel staff not known to be in the 5 elements? Xiao Hua was a little depressed. How come the influence of a sword array is reduced in this sword array? It seems that the demonic tool is not in the 5 elements. When the wishful steel staff was added to the demonic tool during the refining process, although the weight increased, it was contaminated with the 5 elements. The gains did not make up for the losses. Chapter 2578. However, just as Xiao Hua was thinking about how to break this sword formation, the 5-colored sword curtain was suddenly cut off. The entire night sky was only left with the sound of dripping rain. The buzzing sound of the sword had completely disappeared, as if it had never appeared at all. Xiao Hua let out a long sigh. He held the wishful staff in his hand and stood hesitantly in the air. The sword formation had appeared and disappeared suddenly. Moreover, the power of the sword formation was very fierce. It seemed to be more mysterious than the 7-star sword formation that he could set up. If this sword formation had not suddenly disappeared, he was afraid that he would have to spend more effort to break it. Since he had just entered the center of the sword tomb and encountered such a powerful sword formation, then, There were probably more broken sword formations inside. The sword formations must be even more powerful. Was it necessary for him to continue moving forward? At this moment, the distant sword tomb stretched out. Suddenly, a strong silver-white brilliance flashed. It was very obvious in this pitch-black darkness. This silver brilliance was like a flying dragon, but also like a fierce tiger. It circled in the distance and rushed into the sky. It rapidly fell down, and when the distance disappeared into the night, a roaring sound like a dragon and a leaping tiger passed into Xiao Hua's ears. This hissing sound was like a stone that had been thrown into the lake. With a splash, the stone disappeared, but the ripples on the surface of the lake continued to ripple. They slowly rippled across the entire surface of the lake and didn't calm down for a long time. The hissing sound quickly disappeared. However, following that, wong wong wong, sorrowful sword cries were attracted by the hissing sound. One after another, they appeared in the distance and rushed towards the surroundings of the sword tomb, as if they were spreading. The area where Xiao Hua was naturally affected as well. Low and high sword cries rose and fell one after another. Even the area where the sword formation was located at the 5 stars also let out a dull hiss at the same time. Rumble. Within the Buddhist flames, Punisher Dream and Mountain Splitter were actually attracted by the sword hum as well. Within the Buddhist flames, they were itching to give it a try. Even the 7 sword orbs that hadn't been nurtured before seemed to be jumping about. Xiao Hua's primordial spirit, which was in the Dream Executioner's primordial spirit, suddenly jumped. Sorrow, longing, competitiveness, and unyielding emotions filled his primordial spirit. He even had the impulse to charge into the sword cry. Xiao Hua's heart stirred. His flying sword had been nurtured for a long time, but it hadn't produced sword intent for a long time. Now that his primordial spirit had such a perception, wasn't it the best opportunity? Almost without thinking, Xiao Hua opened his mouth, and Dream Executioner and Mountain Splitter flew out. Wong, wong, 2 lively sword cries rushed into the night sky, echoing with the other sword cries. At the same time, a feeling of carefreeness, freedom, and responsibility filled Xiao Hua's heart. Ha! Xiao Hua immediately tossed that trace of hesitation to the back of his mind. The Tao of the Flying Sword is precisely about moving forward courageously, becoming stronger when faced with danger. If one is overcautious and hesitant, how can one become a supreme flying sword? This young master has known about this path for a long time. However, whenever I encounter danger, I feel a bit fearful. I have to think about how to avoid it. How can I become a flying sword? Forget it, forget it, forget it. No matter how powerful this sword tomb is, this young master still has to take a look. Otherwise, how can I face Senior Li Shoubai? Wang, Xiao Hua's heroic spirit soared to the sky. The 2 flying swords were also happy. As the flying swords vibrated, the sword cry was also loud and clear. Unexpectedly, it provoked the nearby countless flying swords to cry out. Xiao Hua was rather stunned. He originally thought that since he had just touched the central edge of the sword tomb, there wouldn't be many broken flying swords. However, he didn't expect that. He had already been trapped in countless flying swords. When he thought of the countless flying swords inside the sword tomb, Xiao Hua's astonishment completely disappeared. He was even somewhat secretly delighted. It must be known that these flying swords were the remnants of tens of thousands of years old. Xiao Hua absolutely wouldn't believe that they hadn't turned into swords. However, just as Xiao Hua's greed was born, this greed was dispelled by the indescribable reverence from the flying swords. The 2 flying swords hovered in the air above the sword catacomb as if they had returned to a different home. The countless sword wheels nearby were the companions and seniors of the flying swords. These flying swords were broken here and laid to rest here. This was the place where they had fought bravely in the past. Just like the countless brave swordsmen and cultivators, no matter what they had fought for, they had fulfilled their duties and done what they should have done. Their corpses were laid to rest here. This place should be respected by all living beings, not destroyed and harassed. Great! Understanding this, Xiao Hua's mind was immediately filled with compassion. He had long since abandoned the idea of taking the broken swords out of the ground. His slightly open left hand also quietly closed. Xiao Hua even slightly bowed, as if he was saluting the countless flying swords, revering their solemn and stirring moments before they were broken. The sword tomb has always existed. These flying swords have never been taken away by sword cultivators. Perhaps this is the meaning. This is the mausoleum of the broken swords. The best thing to do is to not disturb them and let them rest peacefully. Xiao Hua suddenly understood the meaning of the sword tomb. Inside the flying swords, his entire primordial spirit was surrounded by a warm feeling. It was as if only at this moment did the primordial spirit he planted inside the flying swords was recognized by the flying swords. A layer of hazy yet clear veil blocked in front of his primordial spirit. It was as if as long as he could see what was behind the veil, the sword intent that Xiao Hua longed for would be born. Unfortunately, it was as if he was missing an opportunity. This veil still existed. Let's go. Xiao Hua smiled and looked into the distance. The sound of the swords was still gradually fading. Perhaps the answer is there. With two whooshes, the Dream Executor and Mountain Splitter landed at Xiao Hua's feet. Xiao Hua didn't use any other flying techniques. He urged the flying swords to fly. In the dark night, the two red and green flying swords weren't very conspicuous. However, they flew towards the center of the sword tomb with a clear heart that pursued the path of the sword. However, in the time it took for Xiao Hua to smoke half a cigarette, he heard a light tearing sound, as if silk had been torn apart. The raindrops that had been splashing around Xiao Hua suddenly decreased in size, and when Xiao Hua's body became sluggish, the raindrops actually disappeared without a trace. This is bad. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. I just encountered a broken sword array. Now, I'm afraid it's a Dao sect array. Sure enough, just as Xiao Hua's figure flashed and retreated backwards, a kacha-kacha sound rang out from several li to the left of Xiao Hua. In midair, an earth-shattering restrictive force was suddenly born. It was as if a palm that was several li in size had suddenly curled up. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. With a wave of his hand, the seal of turning the sea flew out. An earth-yellow brilliance enveloped Xiao Hua. Only then was the restrictive force barely lifted. This restrictive force seems to be comparable to a talisman from a nascent soul's hand. Xiao Hua pondered in midair. Moreover, the restrictive force of a nascent soul's hand condenses from all directions towards the center. This array is completely born in the entire space. It's as if there's a tiny nascent soul's hand in every inch of space. I don't know how many years this array has been here. Even now, it's still so powerful. An ordinary bright swordsman definitely wouldn't be able to easily escape from this array. Such a powerful array. If only I had an array diagram. Xiao Hua thought this array was the same as the sword array from before. He thought he could escape after waiting a little longer. However, as the array's strength increased, the brilliance of the seal of turning the sea also gradually dimmed. The array didn't seem to have any signs of stopping. Damn it, Xiao Hua cursed. He urged his magic and pointed at the seal of turning the sea. Rise! The seal of turning the sea let out a huge rumbling sound. It seemed to be rapidly expanding. However, as Xiao Hua poured his magic power in, the surroundings of the seal of turning the sea didn't swirl up a hurricane. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth that Xiao Hua expected also didn't suck in. Even the spiritual energy of heaven and earth has actually been confined. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Helpless, he could only urge his magic power again. The true essence in his body surged, but the coiling dragon above the seal of turning the sea gradually came alive again. Roar, the coiling dragon circled around the seal, opened its mouth, and held the seal in its mouth. Then, like a flying dragon in the sky, the coiling dragon soared high into the sky. The seal also emitted an extremely powerful restrictive force and rushed towards the array. Rumble, an earth-shaking rumble rang out. The seal of ocean overturning seal collided with the sealing power of the formation, causing the space several kilometers in front of Xiaohua to tremble. Xiaohua's figure also swayed twice amidst the tremors. The enormous force pressed him down by more than 10 feet. Roar, the coiling dragon of the seal of turning the sea, let out a mournful cry. As Xiaohua's magic power was slightly exhausted, the dragon's body flashed and was about to land on the seal of turning the sea. Rise. Although Xiaohua was shocked that the array covered such a large area, he was even more delighted by the might of his seal of turning the sea. He roared again and urged his magic power. The coiling dragon once again charged towards the array, full of vigor. Buzz! A loud sound was heard. The brilliance of the seal of turning the sea slightly paused in midair. It was like a jade pillar holding up the sky that was collapsing. Humph! This young master wants to see, even without the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, whether or not the true essence in this young master's meridians can break through this so-called array. Xiaohua coldly snorted. The trace of primordial spirit in his meridians urged the dragonization art. Boundless true essence surged, and his magic power instantly rushed into the seal of turning the sea. Wang, the seal of ocean overturning seal, suddenly expanded, and threads of jade began to condense in the surroundings. As the seal of ocean overturning seal flashed, the coiling dragon also gradually grew longer. Then, the entire seal of ocean overturning seal seemed to be supported by a giant. It was both slow and indestructible as it charged into the array. Bang! The clear sound of water rang out. The array was broken by the seal of turning the sea. All of the restrictive force suddenly disappeared, and the rainwater once again poured down from above. Damn it, this is too anticlimactic. Xiaohua was obviously caught unprepared. The seal of turning the sea whistled and soared into the sky. The earthen yellow brilliance illuminated an area of several tens of zhang. Within this abandoned array, the ground was also covered in scarlet-red vegetation. Now that it was washed by the rain, the brilliance was transparent. However, that scarlet-red color was demonic. Chapter 2579. Xiaohua put away the seal of overturning the sea and flew for more than 10 li. Within the range of the array, there are no more changes. I'm afraid I can't rashly move forward anymore. Although Xiaohua's heroic spirit soared to the sky, in the face of the sword cultivators and the array set up by the Taoist sect for tens of thousands of years, he was also anxious in his heart. Let's wait until dawn tomorrow. The rain will stop, then we'll move forward. Thinking of this, Xiaohua looked around and scanned the area with his divine sense. He was about to descend and rest in a low-lying area. However, just as he was about to descend, his left arm suddenly shook. The light protecting his body was hit by a sharp force and instantly collapsed. Even his Taoist robe was torn apart. This is... Xiaohua was shocked and hurriedly checked, but he didn't see anything special in the darkness. When Xiaohua released his Buddhist sense, he felt a 1-foot-long, scimitar-like existence emitting a strange fluctuation. Space crack. Xiaohua suddenly realized that he had already seen this kind of extremely powerful thing in the netherworld. He didn't expect to encounter it again, just as he arrived at the center of the sword tomb. Xiaohua hurriedly opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. Sure enough, a gray brilliance stopped at his left arm. It was thin like a strand of hair. This sword tomb is too dangerous. Xiaohua couldn't help but groan again. He looked again and again with his Dharma eye before his figure landed. He clapped his hand and took out the rabbit talismans. He separately placed them on the snowfield. When Xiaohua grabbed with his hand and was about to activate the rabbit array, the jade slip in his arms suddenly vibrated and seemed to start to heat up. Huh. Xiaohua was surprised. He stretched out his hand and took out the jade slip. He used a bit of magic power to activate it. The jade slip actually flew out a few feet and flew towards the north of the array, 1,000 feet away. Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. He hurriedly grabbed with his hand and took out the talismans that were placed on the snowfield. His figure shot forward and followed the jade slip. He saw the jade slip fly to a place a few feet higher than the snowfield. There was also a Quan-shaped stone block there. However, these rocks were already damaged, and they were covered with scarlet plants. When Xiao Hua saw this, he did not hesitate to grab the rock. A layer of silver light appeared on the rock. This silver light was like mercury leaking to the ground, quickly falling from the top of the rock. A palm-sized square cauldron was revealed. However, the cauldron that was revealed this time was not in perfect condition. There were many flaws on its surface. Xiao Hua looked at it for a moment, then pointed with his finger. The jade slip once again fell into the small cauldron. With a loud bang, the jade slip transformed into a silver splash within the small cauldron. The splash seemed to have been sprayed into the air. Then it transformed into a meteor that flew towards the extreme north. This meteor was extremely fast, seemingly even faster than an ordinary message talisman. While Xiao Hua was stunned, the meteor had already crossed over 1,000 feet. Just as Xiao Hua was about to urge his Imperial Thunder Travel to chase after the shooting star, he stopped the rumbling of thunder. This jade slip is most likely a messaging talisman. Of course, this young master can catch up, but can an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator catch up? In the end, what kind of medicinal pill is Yu Tong selling in his gourd? Could it be he has no intention of harming this young master? Just a mere message talisman? But why wasn't a message talisman just now, but 2 formations instead? Xiao Hua was somewhat unable to understand, but he was not anxious. Since the message talisman had already been sent out, it would be best if someone came. Even if no one came, he would continue to move forward. However, Xiao Hua thought for a moment, and his figure slowly changed. It was the image of the so-called Feng Ying from that day. It had already been more than 10 years. Fortunately, Xiao Hua's muddle-headed memories could actually still change. Moreover, Xiao Hua's own cultivation had also been suppressed to the early stage of foundation establishment. The Taoist robe on Xiao Hua's body naturally changed into an ordinary one. Then, he took out an ordinary disc-shaped magic tool. The misty green brilliance merely blocked Xiao Hua's body. This was not out of Xiao Hua's expectations. After several hours, he saw that the east was already shining, and no one was coming to look for him. Seeing that the pouring rain did not have the slightest sign of stopping, Xiao Hua, who was quietly cultivating, opened his eyes. He pointed his finger, and the bronze plate fell into his hand. Xiao Hua was about to transform again. At this moment, the Quan-shaped stone in front of him suddenly emitted a faint silver light. Oh! Xiao Hua hastily stood still. He flew slightly away from the stone and coldly looked at it. The silver light once again covered the entire stone. However, this time, the stone had transformed into an oval shape, and a broken mirror was revealed from the oval. What a brilliant message talisman technique! Seeing this, Xiao Hua immediately thought, if this technique was used in a battle between Dao cultivators, why would the disciple on duty personally send the message? Even a lot of battle reports would be lost because of this. Emotions gradually appeared on the broken mirror. An old man whose face could not be seen clearly revealed his astonished face. When he saw Xiao Hua, he immediately scolded. How many times did this old man say it? Wu Jiazi Gui was no longer in use before the new year. Why are you still running there? Xiao Hua's eyes turned. He hastily bowed and said, All right, teacher brother knows that this disciple did not receive the notice. This disciple only followed the jade slip that junior brother you gave me and headed to this place. Humph, the old man coldly snorted. Whether or not you receive the notice has nothing to do with this old man. You go and find your junior brother Yu to settle the score. The route of Wu Jiazi Gui is now covered with broken sword formations and spell formations. There are also many spatial cracks. Do you want this old man to send someone to pick you up? If you want to die, don't drag this old man down. Oh, it's now covered? Xiao Hua understood. He was shocked. Could it be that the broken sword formations and spell formations can also change? Senior brother, Xiao Hua hastily shouted. This disciple came here with great difficulty. How do you want this disciple to return? Just now, this disciple was lucky to escape from the sword formation. If not for these raindrops, this disciple would have already died in the sword formation. Where's your junior brother, you? Which one is he? Why didn't he bring you here? The old man coldly asked. He did not answer Xiao Hua's question. Junior brother you. Naturally, it's junior brother Yu Tong. Xiao Hua blinked his eyes and said probingly, he has some matters to attend to, and let this disciple go first. I'm afraid that he will come later. This disciple, could it be that this disciple came too late? At this moment, the silver mirror faintly flickered. The brilliance was somewhat dim. Oh, Yu Dong. When the old man heard this, he seemed to be deep in thought. Soon after, he smiled and said, not late, not late. It's never late. You. Immediately after, on the mirror, the old man's figure flickered extremely. His voice was also unclear. Senior brother. Xiao Hua was somewhat anxious. Just as he was about to shout, the old man appeared again. This old man will pass. It was these 3 words that caused the mirror to vanish. However, the silver oval was still visible, but the silver light was also gradually fading away. What does this old man want to pass on? Xiao Hua waited until this so-called Wu Jiazi Gui had been abolished. When the silver light faded away, this place would no longer have anything special. He wanted to find Yu Tong to vent his anger. Even the idea of finding trouble with Huan Hua Pai would also fall through. That's right, Yu Dong. This old man seemed to have mistaken Yu Tong for Yu Dong, and he hesitated for a moment. Could it be that there are many people with the surname Yu in the Huan Hua sect? Is Yu Dong Yu Tong's senior brother? Moreover, the sword formations and formations within the sword catacomb can actually change. This is even more unexpected. If it weren't for the old man from the Huan Hua sect, I would still be courting death with this useless jade slip in the sword catacomb. But then again, what is the Huan Hua sect doing in the sword tomb? Xiao Hua's eyes turned slightly as he quickly thought about what he had just seen. Clearly, the Huan Hua sect has some tricks up their sleeves in this sword tomb. Moreover, this arrangement had already started long before the Sword Dao battle. This has nothing to do with the Sword Dao battle. Fairy Hong Xia is already a disciple in the late stage of foundation establishment and seems to be very favored by the sect leader of the Huan Hua sect. This young master has never heard her talk about the arrangement of the Huan Hua sect in the sword tomb. This place must be very secretive. If this young master discovered this secret, would he offend the sect leader of the Huan Hua sect? Then, this young master and Fairy Hong Xia's dual cultivation will be a problem? What are you thinking? This young master is now Fengying. Could it be that the Huan Hua sect leader is also in the sword tomb? Xiao Hua immediately laughed sinisterly. That guy Yin Jing is also here. This young master will go and take a look first. As Xiao Hua thought about it, the oval slowly shrank, and the silver color was about to completely disappear. Presumably, when the silver color disappeared, the oval would turn back into an ordinary stone. At this moment, like the jade slip that Xiao Hua sent out, another silver light flashed like a meteor and disappeared into the oval. It was the same jade slip that Xiao Hua sent out earlier. It seems that even the heavens want me to go. Xiao Hua reached out with a smile and took out the jade slip. He immersed his divine sense into it, and indeed, it recorded the location of the other Zigui. Xiao Hua flew up and looked at it carefully. After identifying the direction, he opened his left hand and opened his delusion breaker Dharma eye. His figure slowly flew, and according to the guidance of the jade slip, he flew towards the northwest direction. After Xiao Hua flew away, the silver color of the first Jia Zigui completely disappeared, and it returned to its previous stone shape. At this time, the stones seemed to have been eroded over the years. Not only were there many small holes on the surface like a honeycomb, after being washed by the rain, the stone gradually turned into powder. It seemed that the inside was also decayed. As the rain flowed, the clear water covered the ground of the sword tomb. All the dust seeped into the ground and gradually disappeared. Not to mention Xiao Hua coming here again. Even if the jade slip that he spoke of came again, there would not be any trace of it. Rumble, with a series of loud noises, Xiao Hua used the seal of ocean overturning seal to shatter the numerous sword intents that were as powerful as mountains and rivers. His figure was like a flood dragon as he soared through the sky. Damn it, this is too powerful. Xiao Hua's figure had just left the sword formation when he cried out in astonishment. Chapter 2580. Yes, although Xiao Hua is only at the late stage of foundation establishment, his strength is comparable to the late stage of gold core. Even with his strength, he suffered so much in the sword tomb. What about others? If they haven't reached the nascent soul realm and don't have the strength to transform into a sword, I'm afraid they can't come and go freely, right? No wonder those gold core cultivators in the conference hall didn't have any ideas about the sword tomb. This is indeed not a place for people to stay. Presumably, sword cultivators won't do anything here. Xiao Hua pointed at the seal of ocean overturning, and a faint earthen yellow radiance protected him. Then he took out the jade slip and carefully looked at it. After that, he scratched his head and flew up with slight hesitation. However, it wasn't long before a few more rays of sword light suddenly appeared. No, this young master went the wrong way again. Xiao Hua saw the familiar sword array and immediately realized. He bared his fangs and brandished his claws, wanting to escape. However, it was already too late. The sword lights had already enveloped his body. After searching for more than an hour, Xiao Hua finally arrived in front of another pile of stones that formed the word complete. Sigh. Xiao Hua sighed and looked around. I don't know when this young master's road finding ability will improve. Clearly, this young master can find a path, but this young master has to take a detour. But it feels like flying straight like this is fine. But the actual route is a detour. Forget it. This young master is afraid of this kind of fate. Being able to find this place is already not bad. Immediately, Xiao Hua activated the Zigui and threw the jade slip into it. The silver light on the Zigui flashed, but the jade slip didn't fly away. It only quietly floated in the small cauldron. It seemed that only with this jade slip here could the Zigui's silver light spread out like a wave. After the time it takes to finish a meal, a figure appeared in midair in the northwest. It was impossible to see who it was, but when Xiao Hua got closer, he couldn't help but chuckle. This was a mid-foundation establishment cultivator. His hair was grizzled, his face was thin, and his chin was sharp. A few strands of sparse but long beard floated above his chin. The cultivator's eyes were sharp, and he seemed to be on high alert. He looked Xiao Hua up and down from a distance, and even looked him over. Xiao Hua laughed inwardly, but as soon as he saw who it was, he immediately retracted his Buddhist sense. He absolutely couldn't let this person discover anything unusual. You are? That mesmerized cultivator sized up Xiao Hua from head to toe in a somewhat strange manner. Disciple Feng greets, Senior Brother. Xiao Hua also pretended to hesitate and bowed. Senior Brother? That cultivator was a little strange. His body slightly floated back, and he asked curiously, which family's disciple are you? Which sect? Xiao Hua was just as stunned as that cultivator. This disciple is naturally a disciple of the Huan Hua sect. Could it be? Senior Brother isn't? That cultivator muttered to himself for a moment, then grabbed the jade slip from the Zigui with his hand. He immersed his divine sense into it and asked in a low voice, Who told you to come here? Is this your jade slip? Seeing the cultivator ask so many questions, Xiao Hua's heart thumped. His eyes turned slightly, and he said with a smile, This disciple was told to come here by Senior Brother Yudong. This jade slip wasn't given to this disciple by Senior Brother Yudong. That jade slip was just taken away by a senior brother at Wu Jia Zigui. Oh, so it was a disciple recommended by Yudong. Although that cultivator's voice was somewhat distorted through the mesmerizing robe, the relief in his voice was clear. He pointed with his hand and said, Look at these stones, they're just stubborn stones, but in my hands, I can minor stone command token them into gold. You could be considered lucky to actually be acquainted with Yudong. In the future, you'll be a golden stone. When your cultivation is successful, you'll have to thank you, Dong. Yes, yes, this disciple understands. Xiao Hua's heart moved, and he bowed and said, "This disciple will definitely remember senior brother Yu's kindness in my heart. All right, follow this old man." The cultivator spoke for a long time, but he didn't mention his own name, nor did he say whether or not he was a disciple of the Huanhua sect. With a wave of his hand, he took the lead and flew towards the place where he came from. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent, and he also roused his spirit. Using the speed of an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator, he slowly chased after that cultivator. Sure enough, after flying for a while with the cultivator, Xiao Hua understood why the cultivator didn't encounter sword formations and magic formations, and why he frequently encountered them. That cultivator's flight path wasn't a straight line at all. Sometimes it was curved, sometimes it was bent, and sometimes it was even slanted. It seemed that in this cultivator's eyes, this sword tomb was a maze, and he came and went very freely. At first, Xiao Hua was still thinking about memorizing the route, but after flying for half a cup of tea's time, Xiao Hua gave up like before. It was because that cultivator's flight path was extremely irregular, and there wasn't anything nearby that could be used as a reference, so Xiao Hua really didn't know how to memorize it. He flew straight for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, and during this time, he didn't encounter any magic formations or sword formations. He didn't even come across a single spatial crack, causing Xiao Hua to be endlessly envious. When he thought about how he came here from Jiazigui, he couldn't help but blush with shame in his heart. About 10 feet in front of him, there was another pile of stones, and it wasn't any different from before. If it was the same as before, Xiao Hua would have definitely flown over, but this old man stopped in midair and didn't move forward. Xiao Hua knew that something was wrong, so he cautiously followed behind him, quietly observing the situation. Sure enough, the old man clapped his hand and took out a silvery white triangular object. He slightly activated his magic power, and that object suddenly trembled and flew above the pile of stones. As the object trembled, a trembling, intermittent silver light flowed out from the pile of rocks and slowly, almost with some difficulty, submerged the entire pile of rocks. The moment the entire pile of rocks completely turned silver, the area around the pile of rocks in a radius of 10 feet, which was right in front of the old man, boiled like boiling water. The entire space was filled with silver bubbles. These bubbles contained a great amount of power, and the direction of each bubble was different. Xiao Hua looked at this unforeseen event with some shock. He knew that if an ordinary cultivator suddenly barged in, just by relying on this strange change, the cultivator's body would be torn to shreds. The boiling water continued for the time it took for half an incense stick to burn before it slowly receded. Once the space became clear again, the old man once again pointed with his hand. The 3 rhombus-shaped object from before rose slightly, following which it transformed into a spear-like brilliance that pierced into a spot a few feet to the left of the rock. Pucci, Xiao Hua clearly heard what seemed to be the sound of silk being torn apart. The space was pierced by the spear of light, and an unfathomably deep hole several feet in size appeared on the ground. Damn it, I have to become a spirit-seeking mouse again. Xiao Hua sighed. He knew that the secret of the Huanhua sect was hidden under the ground of the Sword Tomb, so he couldn't help but complain. Of course, Xiao Hua knew how to escape through the earth, so the secret of the Huanhua sect being hidden underground was extremely beneficial to him. However, when he thought about how every time he encountered a problem, he had to solve it underground, so Xiao Hua felt a bit bored. "Junior Marshal Brother phone, please." The old man didn't move. He turned around and raised his hand, indicating for Xiao Hua to enter the cave first. All right, Xiao Hua knew that the old man was still worried about him, so he didn't hesitate and responded in a low voice. His figure flew to the entrance of the cave, and he released a bit of his Buddhist sense before flying into the cave. When Xiao Hua's figure entered the cave, the old man looked left and right. His divine sense also swept the area twice before he felt relieved and landed inside the cave. just as Xiao Hua's figure landed inside the cave, a very strange suction force appeared from inside the cave. It was as if the suction force had grown a hand, and it pulled him into the depths of the cave. Xiao Hua muttered to himself, but he didn't reject this force. His eyes were filled with silver light, as if this deep cave was formed by the silver brilliance. Xiao Hua released his divine sense slightly, and within that silver brilliance, there was actually a sharp point, causing Xiao Hua's divine sense to feel a slight pain. Without a doubt, this place is filled with gold, attribute heaven and earth spirit chi. This deep cave is also formed by gold, attribute heaven and earth spirit chi. Xiao Hua thought to himself, and the magic power in his body slightly condensed to deal with any possible accidents. Sure enough, when Xiao Hua landed about 10 zhang down, the pulling force actually increased, and the direction also changed, as if it wanted to clench a fist. Following that, the surrounding silver light became even more intense, and that kind of sharp cutting force penetrated through the brilliance, directly piercing into Xiao Hua's skin. Naturally, Xiao Hua's protective golden light was about to be activated. Chapter 2581. Io, could it be that you're testing this young master's cultivation? Xiao Hua slightly wrinkled his brows and forcefully restrained his magic power. While he was at it, he took out a yellow protective talisman that he hadn't used for a long time and placed it on his body with his magic power. As soon as the yellow talisman was activated, its brilliance flickered. It seemed that the brilliance in the passage was extremely powerful and was constantly attacking the protective talisman. Junior Marshal Brother Phone, don't worry. The old man's voice floated over Xiao Hua's head. This is the special feature of the restriction here. As long as you don't pay attention to it, it won't harm you. Yes, this disciple understands. Xiao Hua respectfully said. This disciple only instinctively wants to protect himself. As he spoke, Xiao Hua slapped his hand, and the yellow protective talisman fell off. Without the yellow protective talisman's brilliance, the brilliance in the passage was still piercing. However, as the old man said, it didn't seem to be able to penetrate his skin. Wong, just as Xiao Hua was about to send a voice transmission to the old man, he heard a slight rumbling sound. The passage around 1 zhang to his left suddenly began to shake. The silver light that previously wrapped around Xiao Hua also began to shrink. Before Xiao Hua could show any surprise, bubbles that were 3 times bigger than Xiao Hua's body appeared within the silver brilliance. Pop, 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 these bubbles burst one after another. Xiao Hua felt his entire body become light, as if he was floating in the air but also falling down. Everything in front of him became blurry, and the silver brilliance violently shook. The feeling of floating in the air only lasted for a few seconds before a heavy pressure fell on Xiao Hua's shoulder. Teleport. Xiao Hua was very familiar with this feeling. He immediately understood that there was actually a short-distance teleportation formation in this passage. The silver brilliance had just been replaced by a gray-white brilliance when Xiao Hua felt his body become light again. His figure appeared in a small, triangular room. Xiao Hua slightly focused his eyes and looked around. He saw that this small room was only a few qi in size and could only accommodate 3 to 5 people. The surrounding walls were the same as the passage from before. They were all silver white. However, this silver white luster was floating on the walls and wasn't dazzling. And now, there were already 2 middle-stage Foundation establishment cultivators standing in this small room. These 2 cultivators were both middle-aged, each holding a flying sword in their hands. The flying swords were overflowing with sword light, and at this moment, they were pressing against Xiao Hua's ribs. Who are you? Where's your stone tablet? The 2 of them didn't wait for Xiao Hua to come back to his senses as they asked coldly. Disciple is Feng Ying, sent over by senior brother Yudong. Xiao Hua's expression was slightly flustered as he hurriedly replied, Your stone medallion. The 2 of them didn't seem to slack off and continued to ask. And in this disciple's embrace, Xiao Hua cautiously pointed at his own chest and said in a low voice, This disciple will give it to the 2 senior brothers. Yes. A cold snort came from his nose, and the two flying swords moved forward a bit, fearing that Xiao Hua would do something strange. When Xiao Hua took out the jade slip, a cultivator took it and scanned it with his divine sense. His expression changed greatly as he berated. "This is Senior Marshal Brother Yu Bing's stone touch token. When did it become Yudong's? Who the hell are you?" When Xiao Hua heard this, his brows furrowed. Previously, he used the jade slip from over 10 years ago to deceive the so-called Yu Bing, and then he used half-truths to deceive the confused old man just now. He originally thought that he had passed, but he didn't expect that after being transported to this place, he would be exposed by someone. Unconsciously, he became even more suspicious. This inspection is so strict. What secret does this Huan Hua sect have? This stone tablet gold really can increase the cultivation of Huan Hua sect disciples? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua bitterly smiled. Disciple is naturally Feng Ying's. Disciple heard from Junior Marshal Brother Yudong that this place can increase Disciple's cultivation. So Disciple came here according to his jade slip. Just now, in the Sword Tomb, when Junior Marshal Brother Yudong sent out the jade slip, it didn't come back. This jade slip was... Senior Marshal Brother Yu Bing sent it to Disciple again. This situation, Disciple already clearly explained it to a Senior Marshal Brother dressed in a confused robe. If the two Senior Marshal Brothers don't believe me, feel free to ask that Senior Marshal Brother. Xiao Hua actually had Feng Yi's keepsake in his space, but that was also Feng Yi's, not Feng Ying's. Seeing the two cultivators so strict, Xiao Hua didn't dare to rashly take it out. Hearing Xiao Hua's reply, the two were clearly somewhat hesitant. They glanced at each other, and one of the cultivators coldly said, "Take out your keepsake and take a look." This, Xiao Hua was somewhat helpless. His eyes slightly narrowed, and he immediately released his Buddhist sense. Who would have thought that the four walls of the small room were ice cold, just like ice? His Buddhist sense simply couldn't penetrate, and he couldn't see what was outside the small room. He also couldn't determine whether or not the two people he killed wouldn't be discovered by bystanders. "Quickly take it out," the other cultivator loudly shouted, and the flying sword in his hand once again extended towards Xiao Hua's ribs, already touching Xiao Hua's Taoist robe. Here, Xiao Hua clapped his hand, and Feng Yi's keepsake was taken out. However, Xiao Hua was still somewhat hesitant and unhappily handed it over. "You take a look?" The cultivator who used the flying sword to threaten Xiao Hua's waist ordered the other person. That person extended his hand and was about to take the keepsake from Xiao Hua's hand. With a whoo sound, a small door about the height of a person opened behind the cultivator, and a somewhat hoarse voice sounded. "Feng Ying." The person who came was the old man dressed in camouflage, but at this moment, the old man had already removed the camouflage and revealed his true appearance. Of course, when he saw the situation inside the small room, his face became somewhat unsightly. "Oh, I was wondering why this Junior Marshal Brother Feng didn't come out for a long time." So it was the two Junior Marshal Brothers who were making things difficult for him. The old man coldly snorted and said, "This Feng Ying was sent by Yudong, and at the same time, Senior Marshal Brother Yu Bing also let him go. Why are you guys interrogating him like this? Do you think this old man's interrogation wasn't detailed enough? You want to find clues from Feng Ying's body?" Senior Marshal Brother Yu Ping. The face of the cultivator, who originally wanted the keepsake, also became somewhat unsightly. He retracted his hand and cupped his hands. "This is the duty of us two brothers. Please forgive us, Senior Marshal Brother. Your duty is naturally yours," Yu Ping coldly said. "But this old man brought him in. If there was a problem, how could this old man not know?" According to this old man's knowledge, in these past few years, Yudong didn't send many talents here, and he was already scolded by the sect master. Today, he sent Junior Marshal Brother Feng Ying here with great difficulty, and he's even a disciple of the Cleansing Flower sect. You guys are interrogating him like this. Are you dissatisfied with this old man, or with Senior Marshal Brother Yu Bing? Senior Marshal Brother Yu Ping. The other disciple glanced at Xiao Hua, wanted to say something, but hesitated and also put away the flying sword in his hand. What? You have nothing to say? Yu Ping was unwilling to let go. This old man recommended a few disciples 2 years ago, and when they just arrived here, they were made difficult by you guys. They couldn't stand it and gave up such a good opportunity to turn stone into gold, turn around, and left. Did you guys receive Yu Hua's instructions and insist on opposing Senior Marshal Brother Yu Bing? Senior Marshal Brother. The two people's faces were unsightly, and they transmitted in a low voice. We already said just now, this is our duty. Turning stone into gold is an extremely secretive matter, and it's of great importance. Cultivators who aren't closely related to our Yu family absolutely can't participate, and any cultivators with the slightest trace of abnormality can't enter. Senior Marshal Brother, speaking so much in front of outsiders. Aren't you afraid of being punished by Lord Sectmaster? Punished? Haven't we been punished enough? Hearing the word punished, the old man became even more furious. But he didn't forget the middle-aged cultivator's reminder and transmitted in a voice transmission. Yu Dong's mouth is clumsy, and he hasn't recommended any cultivators here for 2 years. If he still can't complete the task this year, you naturally understand his situation. This disciple is an early foundation establishment disciple of the Cleansing Flower sect, and his cultivation seems to be pretty good. Yu Dong must have spent a lot of effort. Just now, he took the initiative to take out his token for this old man to examine. But this old man didn't look carefully. So what if there's something wrong with him? My Yu family's turning stone into gold plan has been going on for more than 10 years, and there hasn't been any problems. What kind of big waves can this little early foundation establishment cultivator cause? Besides, isn't the token in his hand the Cleansing Flower sect? This old man has seen it more than once or twice. Can't you see it too? Speaking up to here, the two middle-aged cultivators' gazes involuntarily fell on the token in Xiao Hua's hand. Seeing the three suddenly transmitting their voices, Xiao Hua's heart jumped, and seeing the three of them looking at the token in his hand, Xiao Hua inwardly cried out in alarm. Presumably, Senior Marshal Brother Yu Bing also saw through Yu Dong's situation, so he took the initiative to give his stone-marking token to Feng Ying. Yu Ping shifted his gaze away from the token in Xiao Hua's hand and transmitted his voice again. This old man will say it here. You can check it as you wish. The matter of Yu Bing and Yu Hua isn't something you and I should get involved in. Previously, you all drove away the disciple this old man chose, and this old man will slowly find an opportunity to settle accounts with you all in the future. This disciple, if you still want to send him back, then do it as soon as possible. Saying this, Yu Ping no longer spoke and turned to leave the room. Senior Marshal Brother Yu Ping, the cultivator on the left said with a smile, this disciple's token is not bad. It's indeed a disciple of the Cleansing Flower sect. How can this one not let him pass? As for what Senior Marshal Brother said just now, it's actually false. This token naturally belongs to the Cleansing Flower sect, but this person may not be a disciple of the Cleansing Flower sect. This old man has never guaranteed that he is a disciple of the Cleansing Flower sect. If you don't check it carefully and something happens, don't drag this old man into it. Yu Ping said with a cold smile, completely ungrateful. Senior Marshal Brother Yu Bing already let him in. What could possibly happen? The other cultivator also hurriedly said with a smile. Senior Marshal Brother Yu Bing is also a Senior Marshal Brother that we all respect. We definitely don't have the intentions that Senior Marshal Brother said just now. Oh, Xiao Hua's suspended heart relaxed again. From a bystander's point of view, he could already see that some people seemed to have found a gap in the struggle between them, an opportunity where others wouldn't check the token in his hand. Chapter 2582. Senior Marshal Brothers, this token. Xiao Hua loosened the reins only to grasp them better and raised his token. Put away. The two cultivators didn't have much coldness on their faces, as if they were really afraid that if Xiao Hua turned around, they would offend that Yu Bing. Feng Ying, come with me. Yu Ping coldly snorted, waved his hand, and walked out of the room first. Yes, disciple understands. Xiao Hua hurriedly put away the token, cupped his hands towards the two cultivators, and quickly chased after them. This senior martial brother Yu Ping is really something. After the two left, the two cultivators also sat cross-legged on the ground. The one on the left complained, what kind of cultivators did he find before? Two loose cultivators, one chi refinement cultivator, with the head of a snake and the eyes of a rat, almost the same as him. They didn't meet the sect master's requirements at all. What's wrong with us blocking them? He, on the other hand, was unconsciously vigilant, and even pushed the responsibility to us. What is this? What is the matter of you Bing and you Hua have to do with us? Forget it, let him be, the other cultivator coldly said. This Feng Ying, it doesn't seem inappropriate, even if it is inappropriate, so what? There are tens of thousands of cultivators who participate in the Midas Touch. Have you ever heard of any of them? He himself is well aware that we didn't check his origin, we only checked his cultivation and aptitude. The cultivator still didn't let it go. He was originally using this as an excuse to stir up trouble. That might not be the case. The other cultivator indifferently said, Yu Dong is favored by Yu Bing. Yu Dong's cultivation is good, but he's a man of few words. How many cultivators did he send over these years? He couldn't fulfill the sect master's requirements. And Yu Bing's face was also unsightly. No wonder Yu Ping was a bit impatient. Isn't that right, 9,000 cultivators ah? The cultivator's face showed a trace of exaggeration. Sure. The other cultivator hurriedly put his finger to his mouth and anxiously said, Do you want to die? This kind of thing. How can you casually say it? Yes, little brother was wrong. The cultivator's heart also trembled, and he hurriedly shut his mouth. How could Xiao Huan know so many secrets? He didn't know that the other party had gone easy on him, and he was still proud of his cleverness. However, he also sensed that something was wrong. This place doesn't seem to be the disciples of the Huan Hua sect. Why are they all surnamed you? Xiao Hua immediately thought of what Zhong Haoren had said. Could it be that this is the Yu family of the Falling Gold Mountain? Falling Gold Mountain? Turning stone into gold. What does this have to do with Huan Hua sect? Based on the surname Yu, Yu Tong must be a disciple of Falling Gold Mountain. He could enter the Huan Hua sect by cheating, so he must have colluded with the Huan Hua sect. Moreover, from the fact that Yu Tong was holding the Master's token that year, the Huan Hua sect is also connected to Falling Gold Mountain. Maybe Falling Gold Mountain is a cultivation family controlled by the Huan Hua sect? Xiao Hua thought as he followed Yu Ping out of the small house. When he saw the situation outside the small house, he was even more shocked. In front of him was a huge space. There were countless buildings in this space, and these buildings were completely different from what Xiao Hua had seen before. The buildings in the past were usually carved beams and painted pillars, and had an antique flavor. Even the buildings in the Sky Patrol City were made of huge stones. Although they were rare, they were not particularly rare. The buildings in front of him were all emitting a silver luster, as if all the buildings were plated with a layer of silver light. Even though they looked like pavilions, the light gave people the illusion that these pavilions were large celestial devices. Moreover, there were many such pavilions, huts, and passageways. They were all connected to each other, as if the entire space was a huge celestial device. The heaven and earth spiritual energy of the metal attribute is indeed dense. Xiao Hua thought to himself, but what is the purpose of the Huan Hua sect, or Falling Gold Mountain, to set up such a huge formation? This is the Sword Tomb. Xiao Hua's astonished gaze moved away from the surrounding buildings, and he looked at the wall beside him. He could not help but stretch out his hand and touch it with his finger. A cold and smooth feeling came from the silver wall, and it was no different from a magical tool that was refined on a daily basis. Yu Ping seemed to have noticed Xiao Hua's action, but he revealed a smile and did not stop him. Outside the small house was a rather large plaza, and the silver floor was incomparably smooth. One could almost see the reflections of people on it. There were not many cultivators walking around the plaza, but when they saw Yu Ping, they nodded slightly or bowed to him, as though they were very familiar with him. In fact, when these disciples saw Xiao Hua, they also nodded slightly, making him feel very warm. I wonder how much Yudong has told you. After leading Xiao Hua into this place, Yu Ping said with a smile, however, this old man does not wish to explain too much to you. Just like what this old man said, being able to participate in my Yu family's Midas touch is definitely the best choice you made in your life. Yes. Xiao Hua looked around and smiled apologetically. Even if this little one had some doubts previously, after seeing this place, this little one has no more doubts. It is just that this little one did not expect that, junior brother, you did not say clearly that this place is actually the Yu family of Fallen Gold Mountain. Hayes, you also know that Yudong's words are not good. He was afraid that you misunderstood, so he only said your Huan Hua sect. However, the relationship between your Huan Hua sect and my Fallen Gold Mountain, I believe you should also know about it. Yu Ping sighed, as though he was explaining something. Of course, the more he explained, the more Xiao Hua was confused. Xiao Hua didn't answer and only laughed foolishly. Yu Ping saw this silly laugh and actually thought that Xiao Hua had understood his meaning. He said, since Yudong introduced you to me, he must have trusted you. Just now, this old man was risking my face to keep you here because I didn't want those two disciples who didn't know when to back down to ruin Yudong's good intentions for you. Wait until your cultivation level increases, you. As he said that, Yu Ping's face turned cold. Although you do not need to be loyal to my Yu family like the disciples of my Fallen Gold Mountain. As long as my Yu family has any matters, you must do your best and not slack off in the slightest. Yes, this disciple understands. Xiao Hua acted very well. However, this matter must not harm the interests of my sect. If not, this disciple will not participate in this Shi Chengjin sect and return to the Huan Hua sect. Ha! Junior brother Feng Ying, you are thinking too much. Yu Ping laughed. When has my Fallen Gold Mountain ever harmed the interests of the Huan Hua sect? If there is such a day, I'm afraid. What are you afraid of? Yu Ping and Xiao Hua walked to a corner, and a hoarse voice sounded from the side of the silver wall that Xiao Hua could not see. Senior brother Yu Hua, Yu Ping seemed to be extremely familiar with this voice, and was even more afraid. Hearing this voice, he immediately shrunk his neck, and stood there respectfully, quietly waiting for this senior brother, named Yu Hua, to appear. Xiao Hua also seemed to be familiar with this voice, and the corner of his mouth rose slightly, and a trace of a smile flashed in his eyes. Sure enough, when that senior brother Yu Hua turned around the corner, wasn't it a white-clothed old man with a slightly green face and a brandy nose who was in the late foundation establishment stage? Wasn't it the person who snatched the robin that Xiao Hua had already caught and gave it to Yutong when Xiao Hua was participating in the disciple selection in the Hua Hua sect? Humph, that Yu Hua was indeed overbearing, and upon seeing Yu Ping, he coldly snorted, how do you know that my Fallen Gold Mountain will harm the interests of the Huan Hua sect? Good. Senior brother knows. Yu Ping hurriedly smiled. This little brother is only assuming. This little brother is also clear in his heart that my Fallen Gold Mountain and the Huan Hua sect are bound together. So how could we do anything that would harm the Huan Hua sect? What do you mean by bound together? Yu Hua glanced at Yu Ping and laughed. Fallen Gold Mountain is Fallen Gold Mountain, and the Huan Hua sect is the Huan Hua sect. One is a cultivation family, and the other is a cultivation sect. Even if there are some interests involved, it is only a temporary cooperation. What are you talking about bound together? It is truly laughable. If this was known by the Huan Hua sect, wouldn't they laugh their heads off? Yes, this little brother naturally understands. Yu Ping was not angry at all, and still lowered his head and smiled apologetically. The Huan Hua sect is a towering tree, and Fallen Gold Mountain is only a small blade of grass under the tree. We're the stalks above the grass, and to be able to enjoy the shade under the big tree, we have to thank the Huan Hua sect. We also have to thank senior brother Yu Hua, this meritorious disciple who is negotiating with the Huan Hua sect for the sake of Fallen Gold Mountain. And it's good that you know. Yu Hua glanced at Xiao Hua. Don't speak nonsense for no reason. If other people were to hear it, who knows what it would be like. You have to remember, Trouble comes from the mouth. This is the disciple that was just selected? Yes, yes. Yuping finally let out a breath and hurriedly laughed. This is also a disciple of the Huanhua sect. This disciple feels that his foundation is quite good. Oh, a disciple of the Huanhua sect? The corner of Yuhua's eye twitched, as if he was interested in Xiaohua. Bad, Xiaohua secretly complained, but he could only brace himself and step forward, bowing. This disciple greets senior brother. No need to call me senior brother. This old man is not a disciple of the Huanhua sect. It's just that I am extremely familiar with many of the Huanhua sect's elders. And you are? Yuhua opened his mouth to ask, but seemed to have thought of something, and waved his hand. Forget it. No matter which fellow's disciple you are, since you are here, you are the beneficiary of the Midas touch. I believe Yuping has already told you. Do your best, young man. The Huanhua sect will be your world in the future. Yes, this disciple understands. This disciple is endlessly grateful to senior brother and the others. Xiaohua hurriedly smiled apologetically. And it's good that you know. Yuhua glanced at Xiaohua and no longer asked about Xiaohua's origin and walked away. When he walked past Xiaohua and Yuping, the ridicule at the corner of his mouth involuntarily appeared, and he did not hide it at all. Chapter 2583. Yuping didn't dare to move. Seeing Yuhua cross half of the square and enter a corridor, he curled his lips and coldly snorted. He seemed to be muttering in a low voice. What's so great about him? He was a middle foundation establishment stage cultivator like me, but he did something for my falling gold mountain. That's why he benefited. He was promoted to an elder, but now he doesn't put falling gold mountain in his eyes. He keeps talking about Huanhua sect, as if he's a disciple of Huanhua sect. Doesn't he know his surname, Is-you? Xiaohua lowered his head and didn't look at Yuping. He only pricked up his ears. At this time, he already understood that this Yuhua was a disciple of Falling Gold Mountain. When Yutong entered Huanhua sect, it was this guy who did something for Falling Gold Mountain. Of course, whether this matter was what Yuping said was unknown, but Xiaohua understood that this Yuhua, who had some relationship with Huanhua sect, seemed to be at odds with Yuping who he saw in the mirror. Haha. Yes. One is Yuping, the other is Yuhua. They were just born, and their parents were already trying to make them at odds. Xiaohua laughed in his heart, but then he muttered, there seems to be something strange. If it's a cultivator who has a good relationship with Huanhua sect, it's reasonable to ask a few questions when they see a junior, such as whose disciple they are, how their master and elders are doing, and so on. Especially the Midas touch, which helps people improve their cultivation. Wouldn't Falling Gold Mountain want to sell it? Strange, strange. Yuping muttered a few words. Seeing that Xiaohua was still obediently lowering his head, he wasn't in a good mood to explain anything to Xiaohua. At this time, Xiaohua whispered, Senior Marshal Brother, isn't this Senior Marshal Brother Yuhua a disciple of my Huanhua sect? He wants to. Yuping coldly said, but Huanhua sect doesn't want him. Now he's an elder of Falling Gold Mountain. How can he enter Huanhua sect? Then he ignored Xiaohua and left first. Xiaohua suppressed the doubts in his heart and followed him into a corridor. This corridor looked very strange. It wasn't straight, but rather tangled and complicated, like a spider web. Yuping led Xiaohua into the corridor, and after walking for another half a cigarette, they arrived at a smooth wall. He patted his hand and took out a token. Activating his magic power, the token flashed with the same silver brilliance as the wall. Pa! Yuping pressed the token against the wall. Once the token and the wall came into contact, it immediately let out a low sword hum, and the area around 10 feet around them began to shake. Feng Ying, place your stone medallion on top. Yuping instructed. Yes, Xiaohua responded. He didn't circulate his magic power and placed the jade slip in front of him. Wu's suction force came from the place where the jade slip came in contact with the wall, firmly sucking the jade slip to the wall. Immediately after, Xiaohua felt the jade slip emitting heat. Let go, Yuping said. Shua, following Xiaohua's release, the jade slip instantly melted, turning into a ball of jade liquid that spread out on the wall. Then it began to spin from the inside out. When the jade liquid seemed to spin into a rune, the jade liquid went deep into the wall that seemed abnormally hard. At the same time, a rune similar to the jade liquid flashed on the wall and disappeared. A small door about the height of a person appeared in the wall. Xiao Hua's gaze swept over it. Inside, there was a small triangular room that was similar to the one he came in from. Junior brother Feng. Yu Ping introduced his medallion, then took out a small jade slip and handed it to Xiao Hua. He smiled and said, "Originally, I should have brought you around here to see the other senior brothers of the Hua sect and Fallen Gold Mountain. However, time is running out and you come a bit late. Junior brother should also be clear that although this is a fast method, there is also a price to pay. Not to mention the pain of the physical body, there will also be problems in the meridians and other places. The most important thing is that junior brother still has to cooperate with this bitter chew method. This is a secret method that my Fallen Gold Mountain created by combining the methods commonly used by the disciples of the Hua sect. Junior brother still needs to look at it. When the time comes, if you can't follow the instructions of the secret method and guide the innate gold chi into your meridians and transform it into your own true essence, not only will this opportunity be gone with the wind, even your own cultivation will have the possibility of all your previous efforts being wasted. Is it that serious? Xiao Hua hurriedly asked. It seems. Junior brother Yudong didn't mention it. Yu Ping said with some displeasure. Without any risk, you can easily advance from the early stage of foundation establishment to the middle stage of foundation establishment or even the late stage of foundation establishment. How can there be such a cheap thing in the world? Junior brother must have already thought it through clearly. If it was that simple, I'm afraid that my Fallen Gold Mountain would have already been filled with foundation establishment cultivators. Why would he need to find other fellow Taoists? Xiao Hua laughed and didn't continue to pester him. He asked again, I just don't know how much time you'll give me. If this secret method is complicated, this disciple doesn't have the confidence to fully comprehend it. This old man can't say for sure. Perhaps several days, perhaps 10 days. Of course, it could also be 10 days. Junior brother should comprehend it earlier. The earlier you comprehend it, the earlier you can grasp it. Otherwise, if you suddenly start, junior brother will be caught unprepared. Yu Ping replied without hesitation. Then is this disciple inside this small room? Can I come out? Xiao Hua looked at the small room and was somewhat hesitant. Naturally, you can't come out. Yu Ping was somewhat impatient. Junior brother, just treat it as seclusion. When you come out of seclusion, if by chance, I'm afraid that this old man will have to call junior brother senior brother. I hope so. Xiao Hua was so happy that his eyes were about to close. However, he still didn't want to go in. At this moment, a kind of fear emerged from the back of his head, as if someone was spying on him. Who? Xiao Hua's heart stirred, and he released his Buddhist sense. However, his back and all around him were completely empty. There wasn't even any divine sense sweeping over him. Should I go in or not? Xiao Hua felt that this place was not good. However, if he were to turn hostile, the cultivators spying on him might not be any weaker than a golden core cultivator. Although he could cause a ruckus, how would he escape? How would he find out the secrets of the Hua sect and Fallen Gold Mountain? All of that would be for naught. How can one catch a tiger cub without entering the tiger's den? This young master wants to see if this small room can trap this young master. Xiao Hua secretly thought in his heart. If so, many thanks to senior brother. Xiao Hua knew that he couldn't hesitate at this moment. After cupping his hands and thanking him, he stepped into the small room. As Xiao Hua's figure entered the small room, Yu Ping waved his hand, and the whole slowly melted, as if a melted liquid was gathering in one place. Yu Ping, who sent this disciple here? An ice-cold voice came from the silver building. It was very loud, but it was impossible to identify its origin. Yu Ping's heart trembled. He immediately bowed respectfully and said to the sky, This is the Hua sect disciple that Yudong chose to send here. Her name is Feng Ying. Oh, Hua sect disciple. This Yudong is really daring. If the Hua sect were to find out about this, Wouldn't it be troublesome? Although the cold voice sounded a little surprised, it didn't sound surprised at all. Yudong has always been cautious. Yu Ping smiled apologetically and said, "If he thinks it's okay, then it's okay. Moreover, he hasn't chosen a disciple yet. This time, if he doesn't find a suitable disciple, I'm afraid he will be punished by the sect master. Perhaps he has no other choice. Besides, there were also many Huan Hua sect disciples before." "Humph," the ice-cold voice snorted coldly. Yu Ping was so frightened that he lowered his head and didn't dare to defend himself. "It's true that you were punished because you didn't find a cultivator and couldn't complete the mission. However, if the cultivator sent here is not suitable and leaks the news or ruins my grand plan, then it won't be a matter of punishment. It will be a consequence of your head being separated from your body." After hearing this, Yu Ping waited for a long while, but didn't say anything else. He tilted his head and looked at the silver building. The sky was also silver. He shrank his neck and hurriedly left. Above the silver sky that Yu Ping was afraid of, a light cloud rose. It had the atmosphere of an immortal. However, these light clouds weren't truly pale white. Instead, they had a kind of heaviness and an indescribable sharpness. They were completely filled with silver. Above the silver clouds, a well-built gold-core old man wearing a silver robe stood there. This old man had silver-white hair and a silver-white beard. Even his face faintly flickered with a silver-white color, making him appear different from others. The strangest thing was that this old man's eyes also emitted a faint silver-white light. He was looking at a tiger-shaped magic tool in his hand. As expected, the mystic artifact was also silvery white in color. On the back of the mystic artifact, there was an oval mirror that was emitting a faint silvery white light. The light reflected the light in the old man's eyes, revealing the situation within the various buildings under the silver clouds. Just like Xiao Hua's small hut, through this tiger-shaped magic tool, the old man was able to see over 10,000 small huts. The vast majority of these huts had a cultivator. These cultivators were all at the early or middle stage of foundation establishment. There were even a few at the late stage. However, these cultivators' Taoist robes were different. They clearly weren't from the same sect. Another similarity was that each cultivator held a small jade slip in their hands. Some were using their divine sense to enter, while others were closing their eyes and pondering. After roughly looking through it, the old man clapped his hand, and a silver-white brilliance appeared on his palm. The tiger-shaped artifact disappeared into the old man's hand, and the silver light in the old man's eyes also dissipated, revealing his pitch-black eyes. However, within those eyes, there were traces of silver light. Wait a few more days. When the people are all gathered, the Midas touch can be activated. The old man seemed very satisfied. A trace of a smile appeared on his face. However, this smile seemed somewhat forced. If the old man wasn't truly happy, then there must be something wrong with the muscles on his face. Chapter 2584. Immediately, the old man turned around and flew for a moment. With a flick of his sleeve, a light flashed, and a huge portal appeared out of thin air. The old man flashed into it, and then the portal disappeared again. Xiao Hua saw that the old man was in a space that was several times larger than the square that Xiao Hua had just seen. This space was empty, and there were only 2 balls of silver-white light rolling in the air. These 2 balls of light looked exactly the same at first glance, but as the old man flew closer, one of the balls of light had a silver-white brilliance mixed with fiery red threads, and a threatening heat rushed over. The other ball of light had a silver-white brilliance mixed with azure threads, and a bone-piercing chill also rushed over. In the face of such extreme heat and extreme cold, the old man's face showed even more satisfaction. He waved his hand, and a dozen silver lights flew out from his sleeve and hit various places in the space. The silver light in the space flourished, and countless strange runes appeared, flowing on the surface of the entire space for a moment before disappearing. Thus, The old man patted his hand and took out the tiger-shaped magic weapon. Under the urging of his spiritual power, the tiger-shaped magic weapon gradually transformed, and a lifelike silver tiger appeared in midair. Roar! The silver tiger raised its head and roared. The golden spiritual energy of heaven and earth rushed into the silver tiger's bloody mouth, and a hurricane was born from the space. However, although the hurricane was strong, the old man's robe was like cast iron, and it did not move at all. When the silver tiger soared to more than 2 feet tall, the silver tiger stopped absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Speed! The old man made a gesture with his hand and pointed at the silver ball of light with azure threads. The silver tiger opened its mouth and spat out a misty silver light. The silver light fell on the ball of light, and like hot water poured on a snowball, the ball of light quickly melted, revealing a gap of 1 person's height. "Little friend Zhang, are you ready?" The old man's voice lowered, which was rare, and his address was even more amiable. Sect Master Yu Qingtian is so impatient. A clear female voice came from the gap, and then a woman's figure appeared in the gap, back to Xiaohua. Under the prying eyes of Sect Master Yu Qingtian, he had no choice but to enter the hut. However, he felt that prying eyes were still there, and this feeling was like a fishbone stuck in his throat, making him very uncomfortable. He had no choice but to pretend to take out the jade slip and carefully read it. However, as he read it, he really went deep into the secret technique and concentrated. After the time it took to eat a meal, he withdrew his divine sense from the jade slip, and immediately, without hesitation, he waved his hand and took out a sword slip. However, as soon as he took it out, he was startled. He raised his head and looked around. Fortunately, the feeling of being spied eyes on, and he was the only one in the hut. This cultivator should be around the middle stage of the gold core, and he is relying on some magic weapon. Xiaohua gave Yu Qingtian a rough estimate. Then, he immersed his divine sense into the sword bamboo slip and looked at the cultivation method for half a meal. Only then did he put away the sword bamboo slip. He frowned slightly and closed his eyes to ponder. His brows gradually relaxed, and the hand seals in Xiaohua's hand also slowly formed, and a silver brilliance gradually emerged from his hand. Finally, it condensed into a silver-white small sword in his hand. Strange! Xiaohua's gaze fell on the small sword, and he muttered in his heart, "How could this falling Gold Mountains Yu family have a secret technique for sword cultivation?" On the surface, this secret technique looks like a cultivation method for Dao cultivators, and the first half is about how to cater to the different fluctuations of the formation and how to guide the sword chi in the formation into the meridians in the body. This formation, perhaps, is the formation that turns stone into gold. And the second half is how to condense the sword chi into true essence. But, according to this secret technique, how can the sword chi be turned into true essence? How can it be guided into the meridians? This sword chi can only be formed into sword origin, right? Moreover, the second half of this secret technique is extremely obscure and vague. It can be said without mercy that it hides a lot of key things. If you comprehend it together with this sword cultivation method, you will be able to understand it. You family, what are they doing? Xiaohua was absolutely puzzled. Are they cultivating their own power? Do they want to break away from the washing flower sect and become a cultivation sect? I can only understand it like this. It seems that all the cultivation families want to break away from their identity as a family. If you family can turn stone into gold, maybe they can create a group of cultivators and becoming a sect won't be difficult. Hee, I'm afraid this is what you want this washing flower sect disciple to promise you. Xiaohua secretly laughed, put away the jade slip and sword slip, and stood up. This young master should also go out and take a look. See if this young master's guess is correct. Thinking, Xiaohua pinched his hand, and a yellow brilliance flashed around his body, and he was about to use the earth escape technique. Unexpectedly, Xiaohua's figure moved, and the silver luster under his feet became even brighter, and even some brilliance was produced. This is bad. This floor is indeed not made of earth or stone. Xiao Hua secretly cursed. His guess when he entered the room just now was actually true. Immediately, Xiao Hua walked to the wall, stretched out his arm, and placed his hand flat on the wall. A kind of ice-cold and brilliant feeling passed through his palm. Xiao Hua even used his finger to knock on the wall a few times, and a clear sound rang out again. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and opened his left hand. In the illusion breaker eye, a layer of faint and thin silver brilliance surrounded him. This brilliance was extremely dense, and there were no flaws. This is troublesome. Xiao Hua complained incessantly and slapped his hand, taking out the rabbit spirit talisman. After a slight hesitation, he hit on the wall. Fortunately, although the silver wall looked extremely dense, and even a needle couldn't pierce it, when the rabbit spirit talisman hit it, it emitted specks of silver brilliance, and the spirit talisman sank in, disappearing without a trace. Seeing this, Xiao Hua's heart calmed down, and he secretly laughed as he hit the other spirit talismans on the wall. After a moment, Xiao Hua carefully grabbed with his hand, and a small hole appeared in the middle of the rabbit spirit talisman. Xiao Hua released his spiritual sense from the hole, and seeing that there were no traces of anyone else, he worriedly stuck his head out. After confirming that he could escape from the room, he retracted his head back and kept the rabbit spirit talisman. Since I can escape so easily, I will act according to the situation. In the end, this young master doesn't believe that the Yu family won't reveal their true colors. This young master doesn't believe that there will be anyone who can block this young master's escape. Xiao Hua said with a cold sneer. Thinking about this, Xiao Hua kept the spirit talisman and sat down cross-legged. He took out the secret techniques of the Yu family and the sword arts of sword cultivators, and carefully compared them, slowly comprehending them. Not to mention that Xiao Hua had fallen into the small room of the Yu family. He relied on his profound strength and didn't care about the danger of this trap. Instead, he calmed his heart, comprehended the secret techniques of the Yu family, and waited for the Yu family to reveal the truth. Furthermore, the Jindan cultivators in the discussion hall were all dressed up, and they personally led their disciples to attack the arrogant sword cultivators according to their previous arrangements, and to open the curtains to the final battle. Before leaving, the Jindan cultivators in the discussion hall gathered together again and discussed for a long time. They seemed to have exhausted their minds and considered all the arrangements, attacks, and even retreating if they failed. They understood in their hearts that this battle was crucial, and they were staking it all on a single throw. If they couldn't seize the opportunity to attack first and catch the sword cultivators off guard, then the Dao cultivators wouldn't be able to recover from their previous disadvantage, and they would be defeated sooner or later. Thus, the people who usually had some grudges during discussions in the discussion hall didn't dare to be negligent, and they openly spoke their thoughts as well as the thoughts of others. Sure enough, after brainstorming together, they really did find quite a few details that they had overlooked. As a matter of fact, in the vicinity of Clear Sky Cave, Kunlun Sex Yuan Zhongyu, Imperial Thunder Sex Gon Mo, and Clear Leaf Sex Jihong all wore grave expressions as they urged the tens of thousands of disciples of the three sects to fly quietly while discussing something in low voices. Yuan Zhongyu's spiritual sense swept out, and he looked at the gloomy sky with spots of light in the distance, and said, "Fellow Taoist Qian, fellow Taoist Ji, I'm afraid that it will be troublesome for us to head to Clear Cave today. That's right, when I heard that the sword cultivators were actually building a city here, I felt that it was funny. The sword cultivators who have always been arrogant actually imitated our Dao cultivators to build a defense, and this is simply stealing it. In the eyes of us experts, this trick is just showing off." Jihong also nodded. But before we left, after listening to everyone's careful analysis, I realized that there was indeed something fishy about this. That's right, today's sword cultivators are no longer the simple-minded people in our eyes who don't know when to advance or retreat, and who only rely on the sharpness of their flying swords to flaunt their superiority. Think about Qin Jian's schemes over the past few years, and how many of our fellow Taoists have died under his sword, and think about how many times we have fallen into the sword cultivator's schemes in this great battle. It makes me shudder. Yuan Zhongyu bit his lips and narrowed his eyes as he spoke. Perhaps this clear cave is another sword cultivator's trap. Ji Hong didn't hide her guilty conscience. Now that I think about it, it was really reckless of me to ask for a battle. Hee, that's exactly what I'm thinking. Yuan Zhongyu also laughed bitterly in a low voice. But now that we're already here, the arrow on the bow has to be shot. At this point, Yuan Zhongyu looked at Qian Mo, who was only looking forward and didn't say anything. He then exchanged glances with Ji Hong and said, "That cunning Qin Jian was killed by 3 juniors, and his lifetime of fame has been created by these 3 kids. Fellow Taoist Qian, congratulations. Your Imperial Thunder Sect, Xiao Hua, is now very famous." Xiao Hua is just the most ordinary disciple in my Imperial Thunder Sect, Qian Mo said indifferently. He even entered my Imperial Thunder Sect as a rogue cultivator. There are many more disciples in my Imperial Thunder Sect who are more outstanding than him. Chapter 2585. Fellow Taoist Qian, in this war, there isn't a disciple of the Imperial Thunder Sect who has more battle merits than him, right? Yuan Zhongyu said with a smile. That's because Xiao Hua's luck is good. At the same time, it's also because my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples are good at teaching. Qian Mo didn't want to talk about Xiao Hua. He pointed his finger forward and said, "Now, my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples who are more outstanding than Xiao Hua are gathered here. I believe that each of them can achieve battle merits comparable to Xiao Hua's." Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong smiled bitterly at the same time. They looked at each other again, and their eyes were filled with bitterness. It was as if what they said just now was like a chicken talking to a duck and couldn't be understood. Also, fellow Taoist Yuan and fellow Taoist Ji just now. This Qin can't agree. This Qin didn't care about their expressions and continued. Sword cultivators are just barbarians. How can they be compared to the great sects of my Tao sect? Although the sword cultivators had the upper hand in the early stages of the war, they only managed to gain the upper hand. If they fought against my Tao sect on the territory of the country of Shi and the country of Lian, they would definitely be lacking in strength. The advantage they had in the early stages can't be easily maintained. As long as the sects of the 3 kingdoms of cultivation really compete with them, they will definitely flee upon hearing the news. Yuan Zhongyu coughed twice. In his heart, he was puzzled as to why Qian Mo had such a good feeling. He reminded him, the sword cultivators were able to destroy Mo Qin Cave at the beginning of the war and even built a big city here without anyone noticing. I'm afraid it's not that simple, right? So what if they aren't simple? Qian Mo's tone was still indifferent. The Kunlun sect, the Clear Leaf sect, and my Imperial Thunder sect are all great sects of the 3 kingdoms of cultivation. They are all sects that reside in the conference hall. If we don't come here, who will? If we don't take this risk, who will? Seeing Qian Mo wearing the label of Great Sect on his head, Yuan Zhongyu smiled and said, "That's right. The Imperial Thunder Sect is a famous great sect in the country of Shi. In my heart, this great sect that values its reputation more than its life is stronger than the likes of Shanghua sect and Qiqiao sect. My Kunlun sect is only in the country of Lian. If we were in the country of Shi, I'm afraid we would be ranked behind the Imperial Thunder Sect." That's right. I don't know too much about the Imperial Thunder Sect, but I've worked with fellow Taoist Qian in the past few years. Fellow Taoist Qian's magnanimity and uprightness have made me sigh with emotion. Presumably, among the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect, from Sect Master Qian Lazy to the most common aura-refining disciple, all of them have the same spirit as fellow Taoist Qian. My Bright Leaf sect truly admires you. The disciples of our 2 sects will be able to interact with each other even better, allowing my Chengyi sect disciples to benefit greatly. Fellow Taoists, you're belittling yourselves. Qian Mo said with a smile, "My Imperial Thunder Sect has the foundation of a great sect, but I'm not as noble as you say. I only do things that are worthy of my conscience. I don't care about other people's opinions. Then this battle, what do you think, fellow Taoist Qian? Yuan Zhongyu's eyes flickered, and he said with some hesitation, "We've already made careful arrangements and preparations to attack the sword cultivator city, but the disciples of the three sects must attack and defend, and have a master and a subordinate. I think fellow Taoist Qian is full of wisdom. This battle should be presided over by fellow Taoist Qian." Yes, yes. Ji Hong quickly smiled apologetically and said, "I think so too." This, Qian Mo's eyes flashed with a hint of eagerness, but he was still hesitant. He said, "Fellow Taoist Yuan should be in charge of the Battle of Clear Sky Cave. This has already been decided in the meeting hall. I'm afraid it's against the rules for me to temporarily take over, right?" Although Qian Mo's words were questioning, it was obvious that he was asking for their opinions. How could Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong not understand? They hurriedly said, "Fellow Taoist Qian, don't decline. In a great battle, the ones who control the situation are always the sages. Fellow Taoist, you haven't been on duty in the meeting hall and have never shown your talent in planning. Now is the time for fellow Taoists to show your ambition and contribute to our Tao sect. That's right, with our disciples and fellow Taoists' hands. Only fellow Taoist's selfless heart can make us feel at ease." Ji Hong added, "Good." Qian Mo clapped his hands and said, "Since fellow Taoists think so highly of me, this seat, I'll take it for the time being. However, there's something that I want to make clear. The merits of this battle will be split equally between the three of us. I won't take any more than that." Good. Fellow Taoist, Qian's noble character and unquestionable integrity can be seen from this. Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong simultaneously raised their thumbs up and said happily, "Let's go. Let's increase our speed. This clear cave is not far ahead. Now that the sky has just turned bright, it's time to attack the sword cultivators and catch them off guard." Qian Mo waved his hand, and the mana in his feet surged as he rushed forward. Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong laughed and said, "Fellow Taoist Qian, your flying technique is obviously faster than ours. Aren't you bullying the two of us?" "Ha ha!" Qian Mo laughed heartily in front of the two of them. Following Qian Mo's command, the tens of thousands of disciples from the three sects indeed increased their flying speed. In less than an hour, they arrived in front of the clear cave. Although the Tao sect disciples had made countless guesses before arriving, when they saw the huge city in front of them that was tens of feet tall and stretched for several miles, they were still somewhat stunned. At this moment, the sun had already risen and the rare, cool sunlight shone on the city walls. The city walls seemed to be completely transparent, as if they were made of ice. The colorful light reflected off the city walls dazzled the eyes of the crowd of cultivators. Sword cultivators? What are they doing? Qian Mo and the rest also groaned. They raised their hands and signaled all the cultivators to stop in midair. Wong, an ear-piercing sound of swords rang out from behind the city walls. It was obvious that the sword cultivators had also discovered the whereabouts of the large group of cultivators. Rays of sword light flashed, and countless sword cultivators flew to the top of the city walls. Fellow Taoist Yuan, is the sword cultivators planning to build another sky patrol city in this clear cave? Qian Mo asked softly. Yuan Zhongyu's face was also filled with astonishment. His spiritual sense swept across the ice city, and he shook his head. The sky patrol city has been around for thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years. How can this ice city be compared to the sky patrol city? Even so, we can't underestimate it. The city walls of this ice city are protected by the sword cultivator's sword array, which has blocked our spiritual sense. We can't see what secrets he has in the city. Ji Hong was a little worried. She whispered, "Clear Cave has an ice city. Could it be that there are other similar big cities? If that's the case, we have to pay attention to the intentions of the sword cultivators. Maybe the purpose of their battle here is far from what we expected." Qian Mo narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "Even if there is such an ice city, we can set up arrays. Attacking cities and seizing territories is the strength of us cultivators. The sword cultivators are actually playing with their weaknesses and avoiding their strengths. Aren't they seeking their own deaths? Fellow Taoists, listen to my orders. My thunder-controlling sect disciples will set up arrays and attack the front. Kunlun sect disciples will attack the left wing, and Clear Leaf sect disciples will attack the right wing. We will talk after we have destroyed this ice city. All right, we will listen to fellow Taoist Qian's orders. Yuan Zhongyu glanced at Ji Hong. Both of them let out a long breath. They took out the tokens in their hands and were about to give orders. Qian Mo sneered, as if he didn't see their expressions. He raised his hand and activated his transcendence energy. He shouted, "Thunder-controlling sect disciples, listen to my orders." Unfortunately, before he could finish his words, a phoenix cry sounded. A ray of emerald green light flew out from the ice city and rushed straight into the sky. A cold-faced woman wearing an emerald green sword robe appeared from the sword light. It was Black Phoenix Sword Sex LV Ruochang. LV Ruochang's eyes were still filled with killing intent. She coldly looked at the tens of thousands of cultivators. Her gaze then fell on Qian Mo, Yuan Zhongyu, and Ji Hong. Audacious cultivators, you actually dare to invade my Mo Qingsheng. LV Ruochang lightly reprimanded, like the cry of a phoenix. The emerald green sword light around her flickered. Ha ha, what a joke. Qian Mo flew a few feet forward and laughed. This is the territory of my country of Shi. It has always been the territory of my Dao cultivators. When did it become the territory of your sword cultivators? You sword cultivators build a city on my Dao sect's land. You have already violated my Dao sect's taboo. Now that my Dao sect disciples have come to encircle you, you actually dare to bite back? Which sect are you swordsmen from? Why aren't you reporting your name? If you surrender early, I can still spare your lives. Aha! This sword knows that cultivators are all sharp-tongued. This sword only said one sentence, and you actually have so many words to deal with this sword. LV Ruochang said coldly, "This sword can't win against you in words. You and the rest, show me your true abilities." After saying this, the sword light around LV Ruochang's body flickered. The emerald green brilliance gradually gathered. Finally, with a wave of LV Ruochang's hand, an emerald green phoenix sword intent flew out. The phoenix's body overflowed with cold light. The ice-cold sword light reflected the sunlight above the ice city. It was extremely beautiful. Following the release of LV Ruochang's sword intent, the flying swords around the ice city let out a wong 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 sword cry. It was as if it was going to resound through the 9 heavens. Moreover, this sword cry seemed to be mixed with an extremely powerful secret technique that could pierce a person's soul. Although some of the lower-level disciples who were slightly closer to the ice city covered their ears with their hands, their figures still fell. 3rd grade illusory sword. Sword array. Seeing LV Ruochang release the sword intent, that incomparably powerful phoenix, and the surrounding flying swords responding to it, Qian Mo and the rest's faces unconsciously changed. The 3rd grade illusory sword was comparable to the late gold core stage. In terms of attack power, it was close to the early nascent soul stage. Qian Mo, Yuan Zhongyu, and Ji Hong were all middle gold core stage cultivators. It seemed that it would not be easy for them to deal with LV Ruochang. That's right, this sword is Black Phoenix Sword Sex LV Ruochang. LV Ruochang coldly said, "You gold core stage cultivators in the conference hall are indeed biting off more than you can chew. You actually did not even investigate the background of my sword cultivator. You don't even know who this sword is. You and the rest can win against this array? You are merely a 3rd grade illusory swordsman. What is there to be proud of?" Qian Mo retorted sarcastically. "We conference hall cultivators are more concerned about many things. How can we investigate all the illusory swordsmen? Moreover, we Dao sect cultivators disdain to arrange spies among our sword cultivators. If we want to fight, we will fight fair and square. Unlike you and the rest, who used all kinds of despicable means to plant spies among our cultivators and investigate all the cultivators in our conference hall. Chapter 2586. Oh, a third-grade illusory sword cultivator? Lu Ruochang's mouth revealed a trace of mockery as he sneered. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy, and you will fight 100 battles without slacking. You don't even know which illusory swordsmen are. How can you win this battle? It won't happen. Qian Mo waved his hand and laughed. In a war, we need to use open schemes. All schemes are paper tigers that can't withstand a single blow. Isn't Qin Jian of the Void Heaven Sword School always scheming? In the end, he died in the hands of 3 kids from my Dao sect. In this old man's opinion, a third-grade illusory swordsman is just SOSO. Ha ha ha. LV Ruochang let out a rare laugh. Qian Mo, you're a gold core cultivator, but when it comes to eloquence, even this sword can't compare. But when it comes to cultivation, even a foundation establishment disciple from your Imperial Thunder School can't compare. Qian Mo's heart skipped a beat as he sneered. Isn't it the terrifying phoenix from my Imperial Thunder School? Do you think this old man doesn't know? LV Ruochang raised his eyebrows as if he suddenly understood what Qian Mo was thinking. He asked curiously, "Oh, you actually know about the terrifying phoenix? This sword really underestimated you. But where's the terrifying phoenix? If he's here, this sword will really run away now." As he spoke, the murderous aura in his eyes became even stronger as he swept his gaze over the disciples of the Imperial Thunder School. You're just a third-grade illusory female swordsman. How can he put you in his eyes? Qian Mo saw that LV Ruochang didn't say who the terrifying phoenix was and was somewhat disappointed. He concealed it and said, "This old man naturally sent him to other places." LV Ruochang didn't speak and coldly swept his gaze over the disciples of the Imperial Thunder School as if he couldn't find the terrifying phoenix. After a moment, he sighed, "Alas, if I knew that you gold core cultivators were as stupid as Jurassic beasts, this sword wouldn't have wasted so much effort. If we attacked directly, you would have become my sword cultivators' prisoners." Qian Mo and the others' faces changed. Just as they were about to speak, LV Ruochang said, "Don't tell this sword that you don't even know who the terrifying phoenix is. Of course we know." Yuan Zhongyu couldn't bear it and shouted, "But why should we tell you? Wasn't the bounty for sword cultivators extremely high? Look for yourselves. Actually, when I said you were Jurassic beasts, you weren't here yet." LV Ruochang seemed to be in a good mood. He said as if he was chatting with a good friend, "Haven't you thought about it? Why is it that in this battle, the golden core cultivators that your Dao sect sent to the meeting hall are only at the mid-stage of the golden core realm? Why isn't there even a disciple in the late golden core stage?" See, it was as if this sentence had woken them up from their daze. Qian Mo and the other 2 middle-stage Jindan stage cultivators' faces suddenly changed as they sucked in a breath of cold air. "How do you know so much about the situation in my discussion hall?" Qian Mo almost cried out involuntarily. His previous calmness was completely gone. Indeed, if this inconspicuous Lu Ruochang had said the names of these 3 people, it would have been fine. After all, the cultivators of the Dao sect all wore the Daoist robes of their respective sections. The Imperial Thunder sect, the Kunlun sect, and the Clear Leaf sect were the 3 people who had entered the conference hall, so their names were easy to say. However, this LV Ruochang actually knew the cultivation levels of all the golden core cultivators in the conference hall. How could they not be shocked? In particular, all the golden core cultivators in the conference hall of the Sky Patrol City were at the mid-stage of the golden core realm. There was not a single cultivator in the late stage of the golden core realm. This strange situation, even for Yuan Zhongyu and the other 2, they had never thought of it. They were assigned to lead the disciples of their respective sects into battle. They all regarded themselves as indispensable elites in their sections. They felt that they were valued by the sect master, and that none of the other golden core disciples were more suitable than them. Even he himself knew that this conference hall was a place to nurture disciples with potential. It was like the front line of a war. They boasted that they were strategizing and had wisdom in their hearts. After this war, they would definitely become the most dazzling figures in the sect. All the rewards and conveniences in the sect would be open to them for their cultivation. Even though they had been discussing in the conference hall for several years, they had been together day and night and were very familiar with each other. They were also used to each other's cultivation levels. However, as Elvira said, they had never thought about why their respective sects did not send a cultivator in the late stage of the Golden Core realm. A cultivator in the late stage of the Golden Core realm against a swordsman in the 3rd grade of the illusory sword seemed to be a real match, right? A cultivator in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm against a swordsman in the 3rd grade of the illusory sword. How could it be said that they met a good match? Perhaps even 3 cultivators in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm would not be able to defeat LV Ruachong in the 3rd grade of the illusory sword. You? Who exactly are you? Jihong could not help but ask. Her face was a little pale. I am LV Ruachong from the Black Phoenix Sword Sect. LV Ruachong did not hide anything. I have already said it clearly. I have no intention of deceiving you. If it weren't for our sects, we wouldn't have sent our senior brothers in the late stage of the Golden Core realm. Qianmo calmed his mind and snorted coldly. To deal with weak sword cultivators like you, we only need to send our senior brothers in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm. At this point, Qianmo purposely added, how about Qin Jian? Wasn't he also in the 3rd grade of the illusory sword? But he was still killed by 3 kids from our Dao sect. If we were to kill Qin Jian, one of us would be enough. Elvir Wachong put away his coldness and laughed out loud. It seems that things are not what you think. The warriors of the Sword region all know about your cultivation and strength. Let's not talk about Qin Jian. How many Golden Core realm cultivators did he kill? He was careless and died in the hands of a few Foundation establishment realm cultivators. I'm afraid it's a little unjust. However, I know very well that if you were to go, you would only end up dying in Qin Jian's hands. Ignorant, arrogant, Qianmo said coldly. As he spoke, he activated his magic power as if he was about to give an order. Don't be anxious, don't be anxious. LV Ruachong pointed his finger and said, actually, I know why your Dao sect only sent you cultivators in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm. Why? Qianmo and the other 2 asked almost at the same time. Obviously, the 3 of them were also suspicious about this matter. It's very simple. LV Ruachong raised his hand and said, you. When did you arrive at Sky Patrol City? You. Where was the place where my sword cultivator warriors fought against you? Qianmo and the rest frowned slightly as if they did not understand. The warriors of the Sword region had invaded the country of Shi for a long time, and you only realized that all the fighting was in the country of Shi. Your nascent soul realm cultivators must have wanted to go in a battle long ago, right? They knew that you would definitely not win this battle. So they sent you disciples in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm to your deaths. The earlier you die, the earlier they would arrive at Sky Patrol City, and the lesser the territory of the country if she occupied by the disciples of the Sword region. Look at the surroundings of Mo Chin Cave. It's just an ice city, do you know? There are many other ice cities in the country of Shi. If it's delayed for a few more years, there will be even more of these ice cities. By then, even if a nascent soul realm cultivator came, he would not be able to turn the situation around. Qianmo and the rest were stunned. It seemed that LV Ruachong's words made sense. Fellow Taoists, don't listen to her nonsense. It was still Ji Hong who was quick-witted. She seemed to have heard the hint in LV Ruachong's words and hurriedly reminded them. Seeing a flash of realization in Qianmo and Yuan Zhongyu's eyes, LV Ruachong laughed out loud. With a wave of his hand, an emerald green sword light soared into the sky. The sharp cry of a phoenix resounded. This sword only needs to say a few words to break your hearts. How can you Golden Core Realm cultivators from the discussion hall be a match for the warriors of the Sword region? Although I'm just guessing, it seems that you are indeed here to die. Warriors kill. Following the cry of the sword, on the walls of the Ice City, dozens of strong sword light flashed. A huge flying sword whistled through the air and pierced towards the disciples of the three sects who were on guard, but did not form a defensive formation. We've been tricked. Quick, form a team and counterattack. Qian Mo and the rest were shocked. When Qian Mo gave the order, Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong did not care about their flattery towards Qian Mo and hurriedly used their powers to command their disciples. In fact, Qian Mo and the rest were indeed tricked. They did not expect that LV Ruochong, who was a third-grade illusory swordsman, would actually try to buy time for the sword cultivators when they were about to meet them. And it was precisely because of these words that Qian Mo and the rest rushed over. The advantage of having the upper hand silently disappeared. Of course, LV Ruochong did have some doubts about the fact that the cultivators of the discussion hall were only in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm. This was because when she was setting up the sword formation, she had already said that in the early days when the sword cultivators ambushed other cultivators, it was because a few late-stage Golden Core realm cultivators suddenly became pregnant. Under the shackles of heaven and earth, the sword cultivators' sword formation was broken and their efforts were in vain. Therefore, she had investigated the situation of the cultivators in the discussion hall. When she discovered this strange matter, she was also puzzled. She did not know what the nascent soul realm cultivators of the three kingdoms were planning. However, she was also clear that when it came to strategies and formations, there was no lack of capable cultivators in the Dao sect. This might also be part of the setup of the nascent soul realm cultivators. Therefore, when she did not understand the situation, she used these words to provoke Qian Mo. On one hand, she wanted to buy time, and on the other hand, she wanted to see what the cultivators were planning. However, the reality disappointed her. Qian Mo and the rest really did not know why. She could not help but look down on the Golden Core Realm cultivators in the discussion hall. But then again, the Golden Core Realm cultivators in the discussion hall also had their own difficulties. It was not that they did not want to send spies to investigate, but swordsmen were different from cultivators. Cultivators were considered to be in the open. The discussion hall and the discussion hall were both there, and everyone knew about it. Anyone could come and investigate. There was no need to talk about the cultivators who were bought over by the swordsmen. Even if they were spies, specially trained by the swordsmen, they were pure cultivators. The defense array of the Sky Patrol City could distinguish the cultivation level, but could not distinguish a person's heart. Chapter 2587. As for the sword cultivators, compared to the Dao sect cultivators, they were in the dark. Although there were spies among the Dao sect cultivators, most of them were in the Huan country and would not necessarily come to the battle. How could it be effective to send a cultivator to gather information among the swordsmen? This was also the reason why LV Ruochong knew the cultivators in the meeting hall like the back of her hand, but Qian Mo and the rest knew nothing about the command of the sword cultivators, especially LV Ruochong. As for whether the Sky Patrol City knew, Qian Mo and the rest did not know. This was because according to the information provided by the Sky Patrol City, there were indeed many third-grade illusory swordsmen who were famous in the battle, such as Qin Jian and the rest. This LV Ruochong was not among them. Speaking of which, LV Ruochong did not expect that he would actually succeed in stalling for time. The many flying swords on the ice wall condensed and rushed towards some of the scattered cultivators. The flying swords were very powerful, stirring up the spirit chi of heaven and earth. The different sword cries were quite chaotic, but in this chaos, there was a rhythm. Every flying sword pointed at the 100 or so cultivators in the center. They were unable to mobilize the true essence in their bodies, and they were unable to use the magic tools and magic treasures in their hands. As for the hundreds of cultivators around these 100 cultivators, although they were less affected, the circulation of their true essence was still obscure, and the circulation of their magic power was also much slower. Seeing the flying swords rapidly approaching, they all panicked and took out their magic tools and magic treasures to meet the enemy. Pay attention. Qianmo saw the situation and knew that things were not going well. He wanted to shout for the disciples to attack in unison according to the formation that they had set up previously. However, seeing that the flying swords were approaching and the disciples had already taken out their magic treasures, he knew that if he continued to shout, it might backfire. Thus, he could only keep quiet. However, when he looked at LV Ruochang with shame and anger, he was surprised. This unknown third-grade illusory female swordsman was actually standing there calmly and watching with interest. She did not join the other swordsmen in attacking the three of them. Damn it, Qianmo gritted his teeth and looked at Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong. He knew that he had no confidence in killing this third-grade illusory swordsman. He had to join forces with the two of them. However, at this moment, Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong looked at the incoming flying swords with great regret. They were helpless. In the blink of an eye, it was already in front of the cultivators. The 100 or so cultivators at the tip of the swords only had time to defend themselves. Their protective talismans and magic treasures were instantly pierced by the swords. Broken corpses fell from the sky. The remaining cultivators took out their magic treasures. Although they were sent flying by the swords, these cultivators were able to find a gap and dodge the sharp swords. Once the number of treasures attacking the flying sword increased, the flying sword would gradually be defeated. Withdraw, LV Ruochang's phoenix cry rang out. The dozens of huge flying swords turned into sword gleams that flowed like flowing water. They all flowed towards the ice city. In just a blink of an eye, the dozens of flying swords killed thousands of Dao sect disciples. Although Qianmo, Yuan Zhongyu, and Ji Hong had already seen the casualty figures on the news, and those figures were much higher than the thousands. They had even become numb to the number of casualties. But now that they were faced with such a bloody scene, they couldn't help but feel heartache. Imperial Thunder's sect disciples. Qianmo waved his hand, and a lightning talisman flew into the air. Form a team and attack. Yes, all the surviving disciples of the Imperial Thunder sect cried out, and the disorderly formation quickly changed. Kunlun's sect disciples. Form a team and attack the left wing. Yuan Zhongyu knew that this was a good opportunity to attack, and hurriedly gave the order. The Kunlun sect disciples raised their arms and shouted like the Imperial Thunder sect disciples, their voices echoing throughout the ice city. Clear Leaf sect disciples, we will form a team and attack the right wing. Ji Hong screamed. The Clear Leaf sect disciples were similarly well trained. After they were caught off guard by the sword cultivators' attack, they immediately changed into a formation. What a pity seeing the Dao sect disciples methodically forming their teams. LV Ruochang's eyes flashed with a trace of regret. If this sword had tens of thousands of warriors, would there be a chance for you guys to form a team under my continuous attacks? If this sword doesn't kill all of you and leave your corpses all over the ground, this sword's surname isn't LV. Split your swords into three and attack the disciples of the three sects. LV Ruochang shouted regretfully. My sword region only has brave warriors who die in battle. There are no cowards. Yes, the tens of thousands of sword gleams had just flown back to the ice city. The swordsmen were in high spirits as they replied. Attack! The Imperial Thunder sect disciples didn't care about the sword cultivators' tricks. With a loud shout, they took out their Dharma treasures and other items. Extremely large lightning bolts were produced, flickering as they attacked the sword cultivators standing on top of the ice city. Rumble, the lightning bolts collided with the ice city's sword formation above the sword cultivators. The lightning bolts lingered in midair, and the entire front of the ice wall shook slightly. In the lightning bolts, the sword gleams that were like swimming fishes dispersed and were destroyed. At the same time, the Kunlun sect disciples also took out their Dharma treasures and other items. Dozens of huge fireballs and dozens of huge yellow light balls swallowed the chaotic spiritual energy of heaven and earth and smashed towards the left wing of the Ice City. Rumble, it was even more powerful than the Imperial Thunder Sect's attack. When the sword gleams on top of the Ice City were destroyed, the entire ice wall also shook, and huge cracks appeared on top of the Ice City. Looking at the Clear Leaf Sect disciples, these tens of thousands of disciples took out their Dharma treasures. They didn't create any illusions, but all their Dharma treasures emitted a faint white light. This light was somewhat similar to Xiao Hua's Buddha's light. When all the light connected together, it formed a faint white screen of light. This screen of light absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth and covered the Ice City like a huge hand. That seemingly gentle brush actually tore apart the entire right wing of the Ice City's sword formation. Those countless tiny sword gleams were easily torn apart by this faint screen of light. This, LV Ruochang saw how powerful the cultivator's combined attack array was and sucked in a breath of cold air. Her eyes narrowed, and that faint murderous aura surfaced on her beautiful face again. Kill! Just as the three sects' attacks succeeded, LV Ruochang gave another order. The dozens of sword gleams from before flew out together again, as if they were going to fly past the attacking Dharma treasures and pierce the cultivators. Attack! The cultivators of the various sects didn't wait for the Golden Core Masters to give the order. They didn't even use their Dharma treasures to attack the flying swords that flew out. The number of Dharma treasures obviously exceeded the number of flying swords. Even though the Dharma treasures didn't have any rules, they swarmed together and annihilated the huge flying swords. Kachacha, a series of chaotic sounds and various colored lights and sword gleams lingered around. Most of the huge flying swords were destroyed by the Dharma treasures, but there were still dozens of flying swords in the core that flew out and killed more than 10 disciples. The Ice City that was just cracked by the flying swords once again flashed with a faint green sword gleam. As the sword gleams danced in the air, the cracks on the Ice City gradually healed. Imperial Thunder Sect disciples split into two groups. Qianmo frowned and didn't miss the opportunity to give an order. One group to attack the swordsman, the other group to attack the Ice City. Yes, the Imperial Thunder Sect disciples roused their spirits. Lightning flashed, forming two thunderclouds. One of the thunderbolts was like a sword, piercing towards the swordsman, while the other struck the already cracked Ice City. Kill! LV Ruochang didn't have many swordsmen under him, so he couldn't divide them like this. He could only rely on the Ice City that was already built to block the Imperial Thunder Sect's attack. If Qianmo could divide the disciples into two groups, then how could Kunlun Sect's Yuan Zhongyu and Clear Leaf Sect's Jihong not see that the swordsmen were at a disadvantage? They also immediately gave the order to divide the disciples into two groups. This way, while the Dao Sect cultivators attacked the Ice City, they could also attack the swordsmen. When the Dharma treasures flashed past, there were also many swordsmen who fell onto the Ice City. At the very beginning, it was a corpse, and that was a trace of fresh blood. However, there were many corpses, and the corpses piled up like a mountain, and the fresh blood splashed onto the Ice City. The previously colorful Ice City was now filled with blood under the bright sun, and it was extremely strange. The Great War. Only at this moment did the bloodthirsty face reveal its cruel nature. Boom! A series of loud sounds rang out. The Clear Leaf Sect's attack on the right side of the Ice City was broken through first. That green sword gleam flashed past, and the blood-red solid ice slid down the Ice City. Good. Jihong couldn't help but clench her fists. She knew that once the Ice City was broken through, the swordsmen would no longer have anything to block them. All the cultivators would be able to use them to attack the swordsmen. There weren't many swordsmen left here, and they wouldn't be a hindrance to the cultivators. Boom, boom. After that, another two loud sounds rang out. The Imperial Thunder Sects and Kunlun Sects ice walls also collapsed. It seemed like the victory of this war was tilted towards the cultivators. Rise. Who would have thought that when Lu Ruochang saw that the ice city was broken through? He didn't panic at all. He let out a low whistle, and the green phoenix sword will slowly retracted into his body. Then, sword gleams surrounded his body, and a huge emerald green flying sword appeared in midair. Wu, the flying sword didn't stab towards the Dao Sect's cultivators, but instead, it went straight into the ground. Hundreds of sword gleams pierced into the ground from the flying sword and shot towards the ice city's walls at the same time. Wong! A series of earth-shaking tremors could be felt. It was as if a giant's hand was growing on top of the city's walls. Under the collapsing ice wall, an even taller and sturdier mud wall slowly emerged from the ground. Isn't this our Dao Sect's spell? Qian Mo was shocked. Does a sword cultivator's sword array have such an effect? Let's quickly order our disciples to attack. Seeing this, Yuan Zhongyu was naturally shocked as well. However, his mind was faster than Qian Mo's by a bit. He hurriedly shouted, "It must be because the earth element's spiritual energy here is too abundant. That's why the sword cultivator, Lu Ruochang, is able to set up a sword array and use a spell similar to our Dao Sect's. This must be her last resort. If we wait for her to finish building the wall, the disciples of our three sects will suffer a great loss again." Chapter 2588. Qian Mo and Ji Hong's hearts trembled. They had clearly seen that the cultivators outnumbered the swordsmen by quite a bit. If they were to split into two groups, they would be evenly matched and the cultivators would suffer losses. If both groups were to attack the swordsmen, not only would the cultivators suffer fewer casualties, they would also be able to defeat the swordsmen earlier. Therefore, they absolutely could not allow the already destroyed city wall to be rebuilt once again. Furthermore, it was very obvious that on top of the earthen wall, the earthen yellow brilliance was extremely dazzling. Compared to the previous ice wall, this earthen wall was even sturdier. With this earthen wall, the sword cultivators would be able to resist stubbornly and turn the situation around. Disciples split into two groups. 40% to face the enemy, 60% to destroy the city, Qian Mo shouted without hesitation. Yes, the group of Imperial Thunder's sect disciples replied in unison, driving away the shock that had just arisen. Immediately, around 60% of the disciples activated their magic treasures. Flashing lightning once again appeared in midair. Thick lightning bolts flashed with brilliance and crazily struck the earthen wall that was still growing. Rumble, as usual, the earth quaked and the mountains shook. Various colors of brilliance flashed in response. Strands of lightning were like spider webs that firmly entangled the earthen wall. As the earthen wall swayed, its rising momentum was immediately blocked. Even the dirt and gravel of the topmost layer could not be condensed by the earthen yellow brilliance, and many of them scattered down. At this moment, LV Ruochang, who was controlling the sword formation, was also flashing with sword light. She could no longer maintain the sword formation. A series of light ripples appeared at the tip of the flying sword and rapidly spread to the sword body. Quick attack. Seeing this, Ji Hong hurriedly ordered her disciples. The Chengyi sect disciples once again took out their magic treasures. The faint white light merged together and struck the earthen wall at almost the same time as the Kunlun sect's huge fireball and other spells. This time, the attack was even stronger than the Imperial Thunder sect's. Not only did it completely block the rising momentum of the earthen wall, it even sent the top few feet of the earthen wall flying. In the midst of the earthen yellow brilliance, dirt and dust flew in all directions, almost covering the sky. Behind the dirt and dust, LV Ruochang's face carried a faint brilliance. That brilliance could not conceal the killing intent in her eyes, and her face was deathly pale. After all, a third-grade illusory swordsman was still incomparable to tens of thousands of Foundation establishment cultivators. Good. All of the Dao sect disciples cheered and clamored. For a Dao sect cultivator to be able to force a third-grade illusory swordsman into such a state, it was something to be proud of. However, when Qian Mo saw the cloud of dust and the murderous aura on LV Ruochang's face, he suddenly felt that something was amiss. He hurriedly shouted, "Imperial Thunder Sect disciple, receive the attack of the sword cultivator." Not only were the disciples of the Imperial Thunder Sect alerted, but the disciples of the Kunlun Sect and the Bright Leaf Sect were also on the move. They were about to activate their respective transcendent artifacts. However, at this moment, the sword cultivators who had been hiding suddenly rushed out from behind the dust. The dozens of flying swords condensed again, much more ferocious than before. The sharp sword splendor pierced from afar, swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Innumerable magic treasures flew out, swaying with splendor. However, apart from about 30% of the magic treasures that had a uniform pace, the other magic treasures were extremely scattered. They were as hasty as when they had first met the flying sword. With a buzzing sound, the flying swords were extremely sharp and pierced deep into the defenses of the magic treasures, taking away the lives of hundreds and thousands of cultivators. The bloody corpses fell from the sky, dyeing the snowy region in front of clear, cave black and red. Steady your footing. Qian Mo and the rest sighed in their hearts. Their battle experience was still not as good as the sword cultivators. At the same time, they hurriedly gave out orders, follow the orders from before, and attack the sword cultivators. Hearing the orders of the 3 golden core cultivators, the group of cultivators hurriedly flew out, filling up the gaps left behind by the fallen cultivators. Once again, they activated their transcendence energy, took out their transcendent artifacts, and launched their attacks towards the half-completed city of Earth. Although there were many gaps to attack during this period of time, the sword cultivators' flying swords were rapidly retreating. They were unable to stop the effective attacks. Rumble, the sounds of explosions were incessant. Splendor also lingered in the air. A vigorous and exceptionally bloody battle had begun once again. Very quickly, 2 hours had passed. On the Dao sect side, close to 30,000 disciples had fallen. The ground had long been covered with corpses. Severed limbs were scattered everywhere, and blood splattered all over the ground. A bloody stench rushed straight into the air. As for the tens of thousands of cultivators who were lucky enough to survive, their transcendence energy was almost depleted. Many of them had already consumed elixirs that did not form their vital essence several times. The Dao sect cultivators, who had the advantage in numbers, were already in such a tragic state. Needless to say, the sword cultivators who were still stubbornly resisting were even worse. On top of the earthen wall, a large number of corpses of sword cultivators were now lying on top of it. The ground outside the earthen wall was also littered with wreckage. The flying swords that were usually the hottest item in the auction in Sky Patrol City were now discarded everywhere. No one's gaze lingered on them for even a moment. It was as if these flying swords were just scrap metal. On top of the earthen wall, many sword cultivators had lost their lives. Now, they could no longer form the same swift and fierce flying sword formation as before. The remaining tens of thousands of disciples could only rely on the defense of the earthen wall to barely hold on. Occasionally, there would be about 10 flying swords that would rush out. However, under the overwhelming attack of the Dao sect cultivators' transcendent artifacts, they were defeated extremely quickly. They were far from causing any particularly heavy casualties to the cultivators. On the contrary, every attack from the cultivators could shake the earthen city and even kill many swordsmen. A solemn and stirring expression gradually appeared on the faces of the swordsmen. They knew that if there were no special accidents, this big city built by Mo Qingdong should be their final resting place. Their individual strength was certainly superior to the cultivators, but in terms of numbers, the difference was too great. Where are the disciples who were originally stationed here? Many quick-witted swordsmen had already secretly pondered. If they were here, these Dao sect cultivators would definitely not be a threat. However, swordsmen were swordsmen. There was a kind of ruthlessness in their bones. Even without LV Ruochang's other orders, they still activated their sword origin and tried their best to summon their flying swords. They wanted to kill as many cultivators as possible before they died. Looking at the group of Dao sect cultivators, there was an obvious relief on their faces. While they were blocking the attacks of the swordsmen, they were also diverting the greatest amount of energy to attack the earthen wall. They knew that as long as this earthen wall was destroyed, this battle would be over. Their expressions were different from the cultivators. Qian Mo, Yuan Zhongyu, and Jihang's expressions were much more serious. They understood in their hearts that if a group of swordsmen could not block a Foundation establishment cultivator, then the final killing move of the swordsman would be LV Ruochang. This third-grade, illusory, female swordsman was not easy to deal with. Not to mention that when she first came into contact with them, she made use of their negligence to stall for time and silently turned the advantage of the cultivators into nothingness. Just now, she instantly used a secret technique to transform into a sword and used it to activate the earthen city walls to defend against the attacks of tens of thousands of cultivators. From this, it could be seen that LV Ruochang's strength was comparable to that of a nascent soul cultivator. How could 3 cultivators who were only at the mid-Jindan stage withstand her? Perhaps we really need a senior martial brother who is at the late Jindan stage. Qian Mo and the other 2 thought about how LV Ruochang tried to sow discord between them. Those words of hers were not without reason. Nameless. That senior martial brother Nameless. Where is he now? Qian Mo thought further than Yuan Zhongyu and Jihang. At this moment, he actually thought of Nameless, who he had only heard a few times in the meeting hall. Senior martial brother Nameless. Was he sent by the sect leader? Is it because the cultivators in the meeting hall are all at the mid-Jindan stage, so he is not at ease? That's right. Why didn't the sect leader send a senior martial brother who is at the late Jindan stage? Isn't senior martial brother Gantian much stronger than me? Even in terms of strategizing, he is much better than me? Why didn't he choose senior martial brother Gantian, but me? That's right. It seems like senior martial brother Gantian had other fortuitous encounters and had long been in seclusion to break through to the nascent soul realm. During the disciple selection, he did not appear at all, right? That's right. What fortuitous encounter did senior martial brother Gantian have? To be able to step into the nascent soul realm. That is a huge fortuitous encounter. I don't know what kind of rewards the sect will give me when I return to Sky Thunder Peak after this great battle. When will I be able to reach senior martial brother Gantian's cultivation level? Now is the time for a great battle. How can I let my imagination run wild? Qian Mo's thoughts suddenly became chaotic, but luckily, a loud rumbling sound pulled him out of the chaos. Seeing everything in front of him, his heart became more and more frightened. Kill! An even louder roar than before shook the heavens. It was because all the noisy Dao sect cultivators were stirred up by the soaring, killing intent. Without needing the orders of the Golden Core cultivators, they all rushed towards the panicked swordsmen. The Earth City that was already on the verge of collapse was finally defeated by the combined forces of the Imperial Thunder Sect, Kunlun Sect, and Clear Leaf Sect disciples. When the Earth Yellow brilliance dissipated, dust flew up again. Behind the Earth Wall, all the Sword Cultivator disciples could be seen clearly. However, the panicked Sword Cultivator disciples were only stunned for a moment before they all flew up. They did not have time to form any flying sword formation. All kinds of sword lights flashed, and all kinds of sword intents danced, welcoming the cultivators who were rushing over with bloodshot eyes. As the weapons clashed, it became more and more bloody. An emerald green phoenix let out a high-pitched cry from behind the earth wall. It flapped its wings, and countless emerald green sword lights floated, looking incomparably sharp. LV Ruochang's cold voice sounded. I have long heard of the name of the terrifying phoenix, and know that his phoenix body is incomparably terrifying. Unfortunately, I have been unable to find that terrifying phoenix, and my long-cherished wish of killing him under my sword cannot be fulfilled. Then, today, I will let you all know the power of my black phoenix sword sex phoenix sword intent. Before his words fell, the sword lights attacked. The tens of thousands of tiny flying swords that formed into phoenixes each contained an enormous amount of power, and each contained LV Ruochang's extremely cold will. As each of them rapidly pierced towards the three cultivators, they were constantly absorbing the chaotic spiritual energy of heaven and earth near Clear Cave. That kind of destructive aura, that kind of feeling of a sword piercing through the heart, enveloped Qianmo, Yuan Zhongyu, and Ji Hong. Although the three of them were very far away, with a distance of several hundred feet between them, there was no difference between this crazy sword intent, and they all attacked together. Chapter 2589. Just in time. Qianmo and the other two were already on high alert. Their respective magic treasures had already been prepared. Seeing that LV Ruochang had finally made his move, their hearts skipped a beat. Without any hesitation, the three magic treasures in their hands flew up into the air. Under the magnificent brilliance, they emitted a buzzing sound as they flew towards the phoenix sword will. Qianmo's hand was pointing towards a dark purple magic treasure. It was in the shape of a pentagon. This pentagon wasn't uniform. Instead, the front three horns shot out like antennae. At the back, the two legs were slightly curled up. It looked like an inkstone, but there was a definite difference. This was Qianmo's natal magic treasure, the lightning flash. As Qianmo chanted the incantation, the pentagonal lightning flash emitted a crackling sound. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth condensed into a hurricane and poured into it. Under the faint purple brilliance, the hair-thin lightning gradually appeared. Moreover, as the lightning flash grew, the lightning also increased in size. Finally, it reached the thickness of a thumb. The most shocking thing was that, as Qianmo chanted the incantation, the lightning flash emitted an indescribable fluctuation. The fluctuation rushed up to the 9 heavens and actually affected the weather. In the sky, the wind and rain suddenly changed. Countless gales swept past, and dark clouds instantly covered the sky. Within these dark clouds, lightning began to condense, and faintly, the sound of thunder flashed through the clouds. Attack! Qianmo's face was dignified. Seeing that the lightning flash had already expanded to several feet, his mouth changed the incantation again. The incantation in his hand was also formed. As Qianmo pointed his hand, a purple brilliance shot into the lightning flash. The lightning flash emitted a buzzing sound and began to revolve. A layer of lightning, as thick as a thumb, formed a net from within the lightning flash. With a whistling sound, it rushed towards the incoming phoenix sword will. Looking at Kunlun's sex Yuan Zhongyu, seeing that LV Ruochang had already made his move, he had already reached into his storage pouch and took out a 3-feet-long sword. This treasure sword was different from ordinary flying swords. It had no edge and was not sharpened. A layer of purple-red light faintly appeared on the sword. At the hilt of the sword, there was a thumb-sized purple-red crystal embedded on it. From the crystal up, countless strange lightning-like runes appeared one after another. As the runes flickered, traces of lightning were produced. In just a moment, the entire treasure sword was covered in lightning. Looking from afar, Yuan Zhongyu looked like a god holding lightning in his hand. The strangest thing was that as Yuan Zhongyu chanted the incantation, his body began to walk in large strides in the air. It was the steps of the Big Dipper. Following Yuan Zhongyu's incantation, another kind of celestial phenomenon condensed in the sky. Bursts of whirlwinds appeared out of thin air. 7 strange, demonic clouds flashed within the whirlwinds. Between each cloud, there were flashes of lightning. The rumbling sound was even more arrogant than the thunderclouds that Qian Mo had attracted. This Yuan Zhongyu was actually using the extremely rare thunder attraction technique of Kunlun sect. The heavenly lightning that was attracted by the sword was somewhat similar to Xiao Hua's lightning manipulation technique. Quick! Yuan Zhongyu chanted the incantation. After the Big Dipper step was completed, he raised his hand and pointed the lightning-like sword. Kachacha, 7 heavenly lightnings struck down from the sky. Following the direction of the sword, it struck towards the left wing of the Phoenix sword will. Lastly, looking at Ji Hong, it was even more strange than Yuan Zhongyu's thunder attraction technique. However, when she felt the sensation of the Phoenix sword will piercing her skin, she immediately stretched out her hand, not towards her storage pouch, but toward her own neck. A long string of pearls was taken out from her snow-white neck. The string of pearls was actually a string of snow-white pearls. The string of pearls was only the size of a pinky finger. When Ji Hong chanted the incantation, the string of pearls flew into the air, swaying with a milky white brilliance. The surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was also stirred into chaos. The string of pearls rapidly expanded, and within the brilliance, a faint red mist was produced. Within the red mist, the string of pearls revealed its true appearance. That was actually 81 lifelike human skulls. Roar! The 81 human skulls roared in unison. In the air, they flipped with a milky white brilliance. Like glaring vajras, they fearlessly rushed towards the right side of the Phoenix sword will. Seeing the different divine abilities of the 3 golden core cultivators, Lu Ruochan's heart was slightly startled. He knew that the Dao sect's magic was incomparably mystical and far from what sword cultivators could compare to. Kill! Lu Ruochan's beautiful eyebrows straightened. The sword origin within his body rapidly surged out. The Phoenix sword will let out a soft whistle and rushed into the lightning net of Qian Mo's lightning flash. Crackle! Crackle! A series of sounds, as if countless tidal waves were slapping against the reefs of the sea, were annihilated at the same time. At the same time, Qian Mo's lightning net was also washed away. The waves of qi that soared to the heavens surged in midair, even causing the swordsmen and cultivators who were fighting near the earthen city to be overturned. However, there was still about 20% of the sword light that passed through the lightning net and still pierced towards Qian Mo. Qian Mo was not surprised by this situation. Once again, he pointed his finger. The lightning flash tilted slightly, and a stream of light purple liquid flowed out from the lightning flash. Following the direction of Qian Mo's incantation, it rushed towards the 20% of the sword light. Lightning water? Lu Ruochang may not have known, but Yuan Zhongyu, who was attacking Lu Ruochang from the side, involuntarily cried out. His 7 bolts of sky lightning struck the left wing of the Phoenix sword will, forcefully destroying the flying swords on the left side of the Phoenix sword will. Only about 10% of the sword light escaped from the sky lightning and struck towards Yuan Zhongyu. Yuan Zhongyu did not dare to be careless with this 10% of the sword light. Yuan Zhongyu's body flashed with an intense brilliance. As he endured the pain of the sky lightning's backlash, he waved his treasured sword again. The remaining sky lightning energy within the treasured sword was drawn out by him using a secret technique. It formed a several zhang wide barrier in front of him, blocking off this 10% of the sword light. It was also at this moment that he saw the lightning water pouring out from Qian Mo's lightning flash. He almost could not believe his own eyes. As the saying goes, sky lightning is formless and can kill all living things in the world. Being able to control sky lightning was a great ability among cultivators. Although the Imperial Thunder Sect was known as the Imperial Thunder Sect, there were not many who had the ability to control sky lightning. Compared to the Imperial Thunder Sect, the Kunlun sect was a cultivation sect with a longer history. This lightning-attracting technique was one of the secret techniques of the sect. If not for Yuan Zhongyu's great fortune and his physique being compatible, he would not have received the grace of the sect and received this secret technique of lightning attracting technique. Yuan Zhongyu had always been very proud of his lightning attracting technique and did not put the sanctimonious Qian Mo in his heart. At the same time, he also did not put the Imperial Thunder sect in his heart. He felt that the Imperial Thunder sect was a sect that relied on the lightning escape technique and could not be compared to the Kunlun sect, which relied on the heavenly thunder spell. However, at this moment, seeing Qian Mo's magic weapon condensing lightning water, how could he not be astonished? At this moment, no one in the crowd was clearer than him about the difficulty of controlling sky lightning. Not to mention that he had to step on the 7 stars and recite the mantra. If there was even the slightest mistake, the sky lightning would directly strike him, causing his soul to scatter. Even if he succeeded in attracting sky lightning water, his original treasure sword would also have to bear a small portion of the sky lightning's power. Although the power was light, it would directly strike the body, the heart meridians, and the soul. The feeling of being struck by sky lightning water was something that could not be described to outsiders. Attracting sky lightning water was already so difficult. Then wouldn't it be even more difficult to condense sky lightning water? Regardless of how hard Yuan Zhongyu racked his brains, he still could not understand how Qian Mo could use a magic weapon to condense sky lightning water. Perhaps Qian Mo's magic weapon was created by imitating the Imperial Thunder sect's lightning pool. A trace of jealousy flashed across Yuan Zhongyu's eyes. He watched as the sky lightning water condensed into a thin layer of defense under Qian Mo's control. It was similar to his own sky lightning water. When the 20% of the sword light rushed into the sky lightning water, it was immediately annihilated and did not cause any ripples. That nameless Imperial Thunder sect Golden Core cultivator. What is he relying on to attract sky lightning water and not be devoured by it? Yuan Zhongyu was jealous, but at the same time, he could not understand how Xiao Hua could directly attract sky lightning water without using a magic weapon. Let's not talk about the 2 Dao sect cultivators using their own sect's secret techniques and controlling the sky lightning water to destroy LV Ruochang's Phoenix Sword Will. Let's talk about Clear Leaf sect's Jihong. The 81 skeletons with the might of a Vajra rushed to the right side of the Phoenix Sword Will and scattered. Like a mysterious array, the skeletons each emitted a milky white brilliance from their eyes, mouth, and nose. This brilliance was somewhat similar to Xiao Hua's Buddha light, but it was much more domineering than the Buddha light. When the sword light condensed from the Phoenix Sword Will's right wing landed within this milky white brilliance, it was immediately absorbed by the white brilliance and entered the mouth and nose. Crunch, crunch, crunch. It was like a chewing sound. The sword light that could kill a Golden Core cultivator, the sword light that contained LV Ruochang's Sword Will, was actually swallowed by the 81 skeletons. Looking from afar, it was as if the 81 skeletons were lying on top of the Phoenix Sword Will and had completely swallowed the right side of the Phoenix Sword Will. The Phoenix Sword Will wailed and shook rapidly. A thin and long dark green sword that was only a foot long was revealed. It was LV Ruochang's flying sword. Ha ha, you are indeed impressive. LV Ruochang waved his hand, and the small flying sword quickly flew back. The Golden Core cultivators in the conference hall, even if they're only in the middle stage of the Golden Core realm, they are definitely not to be underestimated. I admit that I was too careless previously. However, in my eyes, all of you are merely spells that borrow external forces to achieve your own strength. My flying sword of sword cultivators cannot be compared to them. Then LV Ruochang said proudly, "How about this? I will only use 3 moves. If all of you can dodge these 3 moves, I will spare your lives." Could it be that all sword cultivators are people who only know how to talk? Qian Mo activated the liquid lightning and turned it into a biscuit in midair. This biscuit was divided into 8 pieces, similar to the 8 trigrams. The 8 pieces of liquid lightning swelled slightly and emitted a faint sound of thunder. This sound of thunder was light, but it was enough to move one's heart and soul. Qianmo looked at LV Ruochang coldly and said, "Previously, you only used your mouth to delay. Now, you still want to rely on your mouth to gain the upper hand?" "Ah, ignorant child." LV Ruochang's figure flickered, and countless emerald green sword lights shot out like a sword pillar. Not only did they pierce through the surrounding heaven and earth spiritual qi, they even pierced through the heavenly phenomenon that Qianmo and Yuan Zhongyu had conjured. Chapter 2590. Wang, immediately after, the countless sword pillars fell down again, smashing onto the small sword in front of LV Ruochang. After the small sword let out a sword cry, a sword light flashed, and a huge phoenix sword intent was born again. "Fight!" Qianmo glanced at Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong. His hand was the first to cast a spell. The 8 trigrams formed by the water of lightning rotated slightly, slowly flying towards the incomplete phoenix sword intent. It was an extreme confinement, and an indescribable deterrence was born from the water of lightning, firmly enveloping the phoenix sword intent. Separate, LV Ruochang did not care about Qianmo's attack. She chanted a sword spell, and the flying sword within the phoenix sword intent shook slightly. 2 similarly emerald small swords were born from the phoenix sword intent and flew out. The tips of the swords were pointed at Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong. The method of the transformation of the flying swords was somewhat similar to Xiaohua's. When the 2 flying swords were born, the sword pillars that previously rushed up to the sky also smashed down. In the midst of the sword cries of the 2 flying swords, 2 identical phoenix sword intents were born at the same time. Seeing this, Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. If it was a normal fight, needless to say, they would definitely turn around and escape at this time. The further they could escape, the better. They secretly prayed that they would not be caught by this 3rd-grade, illusory, sword female swordsman. However, at this time, tens of thousands of cultivators were still fighting. They could only brace themselves and face the battle. Kill! Yuan Zhongyu's figure swayed again. Although he was fast, there was no lack of stability. He did not dare to make the slightest mistake in his footsteps. The lightning in his hand was still gradually flickering, echoing with the 7 red clouds in the sky. Above the red clouds, an intense brilliance was gradually born. Ji Hong's magic treasure was still emitting a faint brilliance, but at this time, the 81 skulls expanded again, and even began to slowly move, forming a formation in front of Ji Hong. That milky white brilliance had almost turned into a dense curtain of light, protecting Ji Hong's surroundings tightly. LV Ruochang's face was slightly pale. It seemed that he had used up too much of his sword origin to condense the Earth City. Jie, with a sword cry, the phoenix sword intent once again soared into the sky and flew towards the 3 of them. Quick, seeing that the phoenix sword was even stronger than before, Qianmo did not dare to be careless. He hurriedly mobilized all the magic power in his body and continuously poured it into the flash of lightning. Moreover, he also made a hand seal, and the heavenly lightning in the sky was also drawn into the flash of lightning. From within the flash of lightning, traces of lightning water slowly flowed out. Woo! Boom! Kacha! A series of chaotic thunderous sounds resounded. Light purple lightning splashed in all directions. The emerald green sword light also flashed rapidly. The shaking wind brushed against the face, and the momentum scattered in all directions. The thin layer of lightning water was like hot oil that had been poured with cold water. After the phoenix sword intent rushed into the lightning water, it began to explode. In the blink of an eye, endless explosive sounds rang out, and the lightning water exploded into pieces. Of course, the gigantic phoenix sword intent was also destroyed. A beam of green sword light flashed across the sky and pierced towards Qianmo without restraint. The sword light was really like lightning. Just as Qianmo's blood was surging, his meridians felt like they were being cut by knives, and even his hands and feet were somewhat numb. The sword light suddenly came. Qian Mo turned pale with fright. He forced himself to use his flying technique. A shadow flashed past, and the lightning directly hit the flying sword. Qian Mo's body also narrowly avoided it. The lightning evasion technique is indeed impressive. LV Ruochang waved his hand, and the green flying sword no longer attacked. Instead, it slowly flew back. Qian Mo's heart endured for a while, but in the end he did not dare to use the flash of lightning to intercept the flying sword. Quick, Qian Mo's body flew up, and both of his hands were making hand seals. The brilliance of the flash of lightning flashed, and a huge suction force rushed into the sky. Within the dark clouds, lightning flashed, and frequently entered the flash of lightning. Qian Mo's lightning water was easily defeated by LV Ruochang's Phoenix Sword Intent. How good would Yuan Zhongyu and Ji Hong be? However, although Yuan Zhongyu's 7 lightning bolts were also incomparably strong, it contained an endless amount of heavenly lightning energy. Under the impact of the Phoenix Sword Intent, a series of thunderous explosions were born from within the lightning bolts. It was even stronger than Qian Mo's lightning water. Although the Phoenix Sword Intent was finally struck by the lightning bolts, it still rushed out of the lightning bolts and pierced towards Yuan Zhongyu. The sky was filled with killing intent, and Yuan Zhongyu's entire body was enveloped. Yuan Zhongyu tried his best to wave his sword, and the power of lightning on the sword was also very strong. However, Yuan Zhongyu's Taoist robe was still pierced by the sword light. Golden light flashed around his body, and his body was sent flying by the huge force. He almost couldn't stand still in midair. When the sword light dissipated, Yuan Zhongyu let out a long breath. His gaze fell on the sword in his hand that had already returned to its original state. 3rd grade illusory sword. It really lives up to its reputation. Yuan Zhongyu sighed inwardly. Then he thought, Li Zongbao, that little bastard, actually managed to kill a 3rd grade illusory sword. Where did his luck come from? Yuan Zhongyu was so weak, let alone Ji Hong. The pale white brilliance of the 81 skeletons was torn apart by LV Ruochang's flying sword without a trace. Among them, nearly 10 skeletons were torn apart by the sword light. At this moment, Ji Hong's Taoist robe was full of holes. If it wasn't for her protective golden light and a defensive treasure, she was afraid that the attack just now would have taken her life. A sword cultivator's attack power is indeed unparalleled in the world. Ji Hong's face was slightly flushed, and her blood and qi were surging. She thought to herself, Qian Mo and Yuan Zhongyu were also prepared. This lightning magic is really the nemesis of sword cultivators. Ji Hong understood very well. Her cultivation level was not inferior to the two of them. The reason why there was such a difference was definitely because of the difference in magic and treasures. Fight! Ji Hong looked at the Clear Leaf sect disciples who were still fighting fiercely, and a trace of ruthlessness appeared in her eyes. She waved her hand, and the remaining 70 skeletons flew back to her side. They shrunk into the shape of a string of pearls again. Pooh! Ji Hong opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of essence blood, which landed evenly on the string of pearls. Woo! A strange cold wind blew, and the 70 over skeletons abruptly expanded at an extremely fast speed. Moreover, red blood threads flashed within the milky white brilliance. The faint red smoke from before became even denser. Moreover, there was a faint red light emitting from the sockets of the skeleton's eyes. Quick, Ji Hong's technique was not limited to that. She raised her hand, and 10 rays of brilliance hit the skeletons. The fist-sized skeletons let out a woo-woo sound, and like moths to a flame, they pounced towards Ji Hong. When they arrived in front of Ji Hong, they bared their pale white teeth and bit down on her body. At this moment, a trace of hesitation appeared on Ji Hong's face. When she looked at Qian Mo and Yuan Zhongyu, her eyes flashed with a trace of shame and anger. She waved her hand, and a golden light flashed around her body. It was the light of a protective barrier that forced the 70 skeletons away. Since the skeletons were forced away, they once again bared their fangs and brandished their claws, flying forward. However, this time, the skeletons were different from before. The faint red blood on each skeleton gradually expanded, covering the entire skeleton. The 70 skeletons turned into 70 faint red balls. Rise! Jihong immediately took out a milky white elixir and threw it into her mouth. The brilliance on her hand shone again, and she hit the 10 skeletons separately. Gob, dozens of ear-piercing screeches rang out, and the 70 or so skeletons instantly swelled up like bubbles. Moreover, these bubbles became increasingly inflated with the abundance of heaven and earth spiritual chi. In the blink of an eye, they condensed into something that looked like a human head. There were muscles and skin on the head, but they were all pink in color. The faint red, glowing eyes were filled with the desire to devour like a wild beast. Seeing the 70 skeletons growing out, LV Ruochang's eyes flashed with a trace of surprise. His cold voice sounded, "Everything is but an illusion. Everything still depends on one's own strength." Just as his voice fell, LV Ruochang's entire body was surrounded by sword light. The countless sword pillars from before once again shot up into the sky. However, within this light pillar, there was a faint phoenix sword light dancing within. It was obvious that LV Ruochang had already infused his sword will into this sword pillar. Just like before, the sword pillar crashed down and hit the 3 flying swords. The jade-green phoenix sword will was once again born from the flying swords. This time, the 3 phoenixes had shrunk by more than half. However, within the sword will condensed from the 3 swords, the phoenix's will to tilt the world was even more intense. Go! LV Ruochang did not hesitate at all. When the phoenix sword was fully formed, he immediately waved his hand, and the sword energy within his body flew out continuously. The phoenix sword will made a clear J sound and once again rushed towards Qian Mo and the other 2. Just as the phoenix sword was activated, LV Ruochang put his index and middle fingers together and raised them in front of his eyes. An extremely strange sword technique was born between his fingers. The phoenix sword that had already flown up suddenly opened its eyes. Although its phoenix eyes were chaotic, a strange sword light was born from these eyes. When Qian Mo saw that the phoenix sword intent was charging towards him, he hurriedly activated his technique. The lightning flash flickered, and the lightning water once again poured out, turning into a thin layer of thunder that blocked in front of the phoenix sword intent. In fact, after the lightning water within the lightning flash was consumed, Qian Mo once again activated the lightning flash, horizontally blocking in front of him. The lightning in the sky was attracted by the horizontal lightning flash, blocking the path of the phoenix sword intent. The second move, LV Ruochang coldly shouted, "Rumble!" In the blink of an eye, a portion of the sword light was annihilated by the lightning water. The remaining sword light stubbornly passed through the lightning water and stabbed into the lightning flashes. Kachacha! The lightning flashes on the lightning flashes wanted to block the phoenix sword will. However, the thousands of sword lights crazily hit the lightning flashes. This extremely rare magic treasure flashed violently and blocked the sword light. The body of Zheng Wuxing was also sent flying by the lightning flashes more than 10 feet away. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.